Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. Big day today, Sam. We are ranking edge rushers. You ready to go?
Yep. And it turns out there's a million edge rushers to rank. We haven't ranked a million, but there's a lot of them.
We've ranked only 10. I'm going to get mug check here. I've mixed it up here today. I've got, first off, my form. Remember we got these big thermoses? Did you get this?
No.
New Era thermos. We remember there was a point where I got all the good gifts as podcast co-host. This was from New Era when they sent us hats. The military grade thermos that keeps my coffee extremely hot. Just going to pour this live on air here.
No, I never got one of those.
And I have my Harry mug, which is dwindling a little bit. But Harry, when he was a baby, we got baby pictures of Harry on here. They're starting to fall off a little bit. So I've mixed it up here today.
The Old Faithful.
Your Old Faithful, which you haven't had for a few shows here. So anyway, we're getting ready to go here for edge rushers. You're right. There's a lot of guys to go through here. We each have a top 10 though to discuss.
Yeah. If you don't like mug talk, you're gonna hate the beginning of these shows these days.
There's enough people There's enough
focusing
people
in on that minority group.
There's more than one person, so you could project it forward. So let's start with high level. First off, nice mock draft on Monday. Did you get any good feedback for your mock on Monday? Good or bad?
I mean, none directly. There may be a ton in the chat or the comments, but I haven't read them because I assume that the feedback for a mock draft in terms of comments are unlikely to be glowing.
Did you by the way, if you are in the chat, if there's more than 3 people who like mug talk, let us know. Okay? We'll keep it going. Just let us know. The other thing is we did a 1-team 3-round mock draft, Detroit Lions. We dropped that on the channel, and we are open to suggestions for the next team. If you enjoyed that, we'll just go use the mock draft simulator. 3-round mock draft. Lions are already up on the site. Any who should be next? Who's the next? You never know when we're going to go live and do a 3-round mock for a certain team. So let us know who it should be. Great. All right, let's start high level with this edge rush class. What did you think about the class? We've talked about being deep. Is that what you found as we were, watching tape here?
Yeah, I did. I did think it was deep. Obviously, we've kind of talked about the top guys a bit already. We'll get to a lot of those. But yeah, I unusually, certainly relative to a few draft classes recently, you're deep into this group and you're 15 20 edge rushers deep, and you're still finding guys I think that I like, that have juice. Usually you get beyond the top 5, beyond the top 10 of an edge rusher class, and you're very quickly into this group that is like these guys. I mean, I used the term beige before. They are just beige, average, indistinct pass rushers that probably won't be particularly good NFL players because of that. There aren't that many of those guys in this draft class, number one. And number two, I think you have to go further before you get to them than you did in previous years.
Yeah, I think, look, we'll get through our top 10, but we'll have plenty of names at the end for people to discuss or people to think about. And especially when there's maybe designated pass rushers or good run stoppers, certain types of players who could still fill a role beyond the top 10. I think when you mentioned the beige thing a couple of years ago, we were at like edge rusher 6, I believe, right, when we were ranking these players. That probably doesn't show up until maybe 12 or 13 on this list. They all have something to work with here.
It was one of the Ojalaris at BJ maybe, and he was the first beige person of that draft class. And you're like, look, he's fine. There's nothing like bad about him. He's just okay at everything. And it's like that tends not to translate to tremendously successful NFL pass rusher. If there's one thing you notice about, high-end NFL pass rushers, they're really good at something. Not necessarily the same thing all the time, but they're very, very good at something. So when you have a guy that is just beige, not great at anything, but just good as a composite, I don't feel great about those guys.
Just to answer one of the questions in the chat before we begin about the term edge, I think we were kind of at the forefront of this at PFF. Not the only ones who ever did it, but at PFF in the early days, we used to distinguish between a 3-4 outside linebacker and a 4-3 defensive end. And it used to actually pain me listening to old commentary when somebody said that guy's a linebacker when he was a 3-4 outside backer. I'm like, that's not his role. He's He's rushing the passer 95% of the time. He's not a linebacker. So there was a point where the NFL essentially started to blend the 4-3 and the 3-4. Was the guy standing up? Is his hand down? Doesn't matter. He's a pass rusher first. He's an edge setter in the run game. And so I know at PFF, we just renamed everybody edge. And I think a lot of people just started doing that. That's the one thing I told you. Mel Kiper will not budge. He's just calling those guys outside linebackers still. And, lumping a 4-3 outside backer with a 3-4 outside backer. He doesn't care. But this is, these guys are edge rushers. They're essentially playing the same role. Rush the passer, set the edge in the run game. Rarely drop into coverage.
Yeah, well, with the term, we actually started to push the term before, like now, with all the sort of multiple fronts and sub packages and all that kind of thing. Like the functional difference between, like, they're basically the same. Like the guy on the edge of the line is the edge rusher. Previously, when you had much more of these sort of rigid, like this is a 4-3 defense, 4 down linemen, 3 off the ball linebackers, and then the secondary versus 3 down linemen, 4 off the ball linebackers, 2 of which were outside linebackers. Like then the outside linebacker in a 3-4 had much more in common with the down defensive end in a 4-3 than he did the outside linebacker in a 4-3. So that was the original point, is that these guys, if you call them outside linebackers because that's the position designation, you're effectively putting him in the wrong bucket. He's much more close to the 4-3 defensive end than he is a 4-3 outside linebacker. So let's just call them interior, players, edge rushers, and the linebacker will refer to off the ball linebacker. Now, since then, like over the last 20 years, with the way defenses have gone, it's become more apparent that it doesn't, like, the designation is almost irrelevant. It's where this guy plays. Like, this guy is an edge defender, whether or not he's got his hand in the dirt or not. And given the way defense are lined up, it's much more useful now. It was sensible at the time, but the schemes have moved even more in that direction now.
Yeah, and there are certain players, I know you mentioned this in your notes, certain players who are better with their hand in the dirt versus standing up, but a lot of times the scheme isn't dictating whether or not you need to stand or rush from a 3-point stance. We'll get into that a little bit as we go here. All right, man, you ready to go? As we've done before, you give your top 5, and I'll let you know where there's crossover with me, then we'll go player by player. So I'll let you go first and unveil your top 5 edge rushers.
Yeah, well, despite the fact that we've done this completely independently and in our own little vacuums, the producers have already let slip that we have the same top 10, different orders, but the same 10 people, which is actually kind of amazing.
I'm disappointed in this news. I mean, there's one player that you've been talking up recently that not even that I rethought, but I put into my top 10, so I knew we'd have that crossover there. I'm surprised though, because between 8, 9, and 10, I was like, there's a bunch of guys I want to squeeze in here, and I didn't, and so apparently neither of us did. So we have the same top 10. We are the old married couple here, Sam.
And I have one guy who is just outside the top 10 that I was pretty certain you would have in your top 10. And I have another guy. I literally flipped 9 and 10 or 10 and 11 right as I sent in the list. I had it written down the other way and then flipped it back when I sent the list in. So that's how close it was to not having the same top 10 guys.
I'll have some caveats at the 8 through 13. Are we going to probably end up being pretty close for me? So let's get into it.
Yeah, the order is consequential though, because I think that, like, again, we've said this for a while. Generally, it's kind of chalky, the players you're having in this group, but the gaps and the tiers and how you're ordering them, I think, are fairly different. So, number one, it feels, I think everyone's going to have Abdul Carter as number one. I think he is. I do think the gap between him and the rest is closer than other people do, though, which is, I generally seem to feel that way about this draft. A lot of people have these like clear number ones, and then there's a huge gap. I generally think there's not that many positions where the number one guy is by far and away the number one guy at that position. So I have Abdul Carter number one. Jalon Walker is my number 2 edge rusher, Georgia. Mike Green from Marshall is my number 3. Donovan Ezeiraku from Boston College is my number 4. And then James Pearce Jr. from Tennessee is my number 5.
All right. We at least have the same players, different order. So it's all the same 5 for me. Again, I'll list out my 5 and then we'll go player by player here by your list here. I have Abdul Carter number 1 as well. I went Marshall's Mike Green, number 2. I went James Pearce, number 3. And then Jalon Walker, number 4. As much as I love Jalon Walker and the whole discussion about him, I still have him 4. And I have Donovan Ezeiraku from Boston College, number 5. So same top 5, unfortunately. Here we are talking about the same players. It's fine. It's fine. It's the check the mic. We'll have our consensus check the mic list maybe at the end of this.
Yeah. And the other thing to throw out there is a kind of the caveat discussion point. This is basically on the field only. Like,
yeah.
James Pearce Jr. in particular, there are character concerns that you hear out there. They're pretty persistent. I don't think they're quite at the level yet where it's like we're talking about Jermaine Burton here on the edge, but it's definitely the biggest red flag for James Pearce. So if you're looking at just the on-field stuff, he's going to appear higher on a list than you are if you're saying, well, all the stuff we know, where are you going to draft this guy? Like, I'm not sure I would draft James Pearce Jr., certainly not particularly high in this draft, but just looking on the field, I think he's one of the best players there. Mike Green, has got some off-field concerns as well, some sexual assault accusations, that kind of thing. So again, it's this like on the field Mike Green versus once you've dived into all that stuff as an organization, how do you feel about bringing that guy into your organization? That's information we generally aren't particularly privy to, and so don't have a good way of quantifying what that should be.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good explanation. I'm agreeing. I'm ranking this based off of on the field. I made that same point about Burton last year. I said I'm going to put him at wide receiver 4 because I love the on-field play. And if you listen, let's listen to the analysis. I have no idea what's going to happen, with the off the field, and obviously that hasn't turned out great through 1 year for Burton.
Yeah, and obviously he's a good example, right? Because even at the time, there was so much of this out there, it was swirling. There was all kinds of rumors, but it's very difficult to people tend not to want to give you specifics on that kind of thing because generally you're dragging a dude's character, right? And if you're wrong, you look like an asshole. And even if you're right, you kind of look like an asshole because he's, a young kid going to the NFL, trying to live out his dream or whatever. So it's hard to know, how much. Obviously, all of this information was out there about Jermaine Burton that nobody had a good thing to say about him. You're like, well, how much should you weigh that versus the talent is impressive. So you just say, look, we're going to rank him on the field and then know to be concerned about the other stuff. Obviously with him, it was like an extreme version of this is the kind of problematic behavior that's probably going to dump him out of the league within a couple of years. But I think it's very difficult to know that without knowing exactly what we're talking about. And even then, it's guesswork how that's going to project once the kid has money, once he's on his own, once he's in a new city. It's all, who knows, right? Another guy with very similar sort of profile or history to Jermaine Burton might end up in a new place, be completely, might go the other way, right? That guy now might knuckle down because he's on his own in a new city and away from friends or whatever. There's just no way of projecting that stuff, I don't think, particularly if you're outside of the organization and don't have the real details on it.
All right, man, let's get through the list here. Abdul Carter, number 1 for both of us here. What do you like about Abdul Carter? And you said, hey, maybe he's closer to some of the other prospects. Why is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously he's got this interesting story where he's kind of done the Micah Parsons transition, but already in college, he went from being an off-the-ball linebacker to being a true edge defender, and this was really his first season doing that. And even within that first season, you can see impressive development. He's done the learning already early in the season. He didn't know what was happening. His awareness for blocks coming from places that weren't right in front of him was zero. Was it West Virginia? West Virginia, I think.
Yep.
Kept having these tight ends just coming across the formation and wiping them out. And he every single time ran right into it, never knew it was coming, just blindsided. Late in the season, you're seeing games where similar blocks, he understands it. He knows where that block is coming from. He's now attacking it with the correct shoulder, with the correct form. He's improved his fundamentals and his awareness all within the course of one season. So that's a really encouraging thing. Yes, the sample size is low, but we've already seen this growth and development within one season of coaching at that. But he's got, incredibly impressive quick twitch explosion, the stuff you want to see, the burst, the explosion, the quick twitch ability. He's really good at that stuff. That that jumps out of the tape. I think he's pretty strong as well. Like, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he does have power. He does have strength. He's not someone that's just going to get washed out immediately from being an undersized edge defender. So yeah, I think, you know, his first step, his lateral agility, all the toolsy things are there. But I don't think he's this sort of amazing, like, maybe it's just a product of this draft, but like the conversation of being number one overall of, you know, I don't think he's up there with like the best edge defending prospects we've seen in the last, 10 years.
And so the best edge prospects we've seen in the last 10 years, that includes Myles Garrett, the Boses, Will Anderson, Aiden Hutchinson, Chase Young, even though of all that group, all of those guys hit, except maybe Chase Young, you would say, didn't really live up to the hype. Those were the best edge prospects. I might be missing one or two off the top of my head, but those are the guys. And we might put even Latu in there. And in hindsight, probably should have put Jared Verse, and, you know, he had a similar pedigree. But either way, those are the guys you're talking about. I understand that argument, but the point that you started with was this is his first year truly playing on the edge. You know, when you watched Abdul Carter in 2023, he's more of an off-the-ball linebacker. Most of his pass rushes were either blitzes or walked up into the A gap or the B gap. Every now and again, they'd put him on the edge, and you could say, okay, I know they're moving him to edge here in 24. They're doing the Micah Parsons move, as you said, in college instead of at the NFL level. I see the traits, but he doesn't know what he's doing yet. And honestly, when the season started, I was like 3-4 weeks into it. I felt like I was going to be the guy that, you know, always does this. Oh, you think this edge rusher is so good? We'll talk about one of those guys later. He's not. He's just not productive yet. He doesn't know what he's doing. I really thought I was going to be lower on Abdul Carter after a few weeks into the season, because it was like, how he hasn't made this transition yet. He doesn't know what he's doing yet, but you could see the growth. And this is why I think you can put Abdul Carter into the same prospect bucket as the Boses, as Chase Young, as Will Anderson and Aiden Hutchinson and those top guys. Because I think by the end of the season, he was playing at that level. And you can assume other growth because he's only played on the edge for that 1 year. His burst, his bend, you mentioned the power. I think he'll get a little better against the run. Seeing the run game a little bit better. But I think he has all the tools necessary to rush the passer. And when we talk about rushing the passer, it can't just be the burst and the get off and, you know, getting to 8 or 9 yards as fast as you can. There has to be some sort of power component. There has to be some sort of inside counter component. And I think Abdul Carter has the ability to do all that. So early in the season, I thought, this might be the next projectable pass rusher that's talked about going in the top 5 or 10. Those guys are risky. When we talk projectable for pass rushers, to me, that's as risky as taking a Jack Sawyer, who didn't work out, but taking a low, terrible workout guy. Projecting a pass rusher is just as dangerous as hoping that the bad athlete just out-athletes people at the NFL level. It's just as bad. So I thought Abdul Carter could go that route, but by the end of the season, he didn't. So I was sold on him as edge one, sold on him as a blue chip player, and think that he will continue to progress because of, just 1 year playing on the edge matters. And I think he just showed that development throughout the season.
Yeah, the development was really impressive. I mean, through the first 3 weeks of the season, he hadn't had a particularly good PFF graded game. And that was, usually the first few weeks of your season for a lot of teams are against like the lower level of competition, right? So it's West Virginia, Bowling Green, and Kent State. Like, that is not an A-list tier of opponents over those first few weeks. And he had 2 pressures, and 1 pressure, albeit that pressure being a sack. Through 3 weeks, you're looking at this and like, this is not productive. We're talking about a prospect and a project. And against that first game on the edge against West Virginia, when all those blocks were just annihilating him, he had a run defense grade of 50. Like, this was not good for the first few weeks. But then, you're right. Like, after that, 1, 2, 3 games with a 90+ pass rushing grade, multiple games with 8 pressures. He really did become that guy and put a ton of pressure out there. So, look, I really like him. I think he is the number one pass rusher in this draft. He's the one guy where the composite of all the pass rushing skills is there, right? He's got the explosion, the quick twitch. His first step into gaps is nuts. Like, he beats a lot of linemen almost like a wide receiver with a release package, where you can completely wrong foot the guy and then get into the space you've opened up. He's able to do that with like offensive linemen where they have him, moving around or lined up inside, and he's just able to completely wrong foot these guys and attack the gap. He's got really good lateral agility, like a really sick kind of Euro step to win blocks outright and get into gaps. He's got the dip and the bend to get around the corner and really, run that hoop that teams love to see. So I think he's the cleanest sort of composite of pass rushing skills, along with the kind of resume of having done it at least for the majority of the season.
Yeah, in that same growth, I think in everything you just described as a pass rusher, I think you saw similar growth in the run game. He's not going to be Verse. When you describe Jared Verse, you're like, this dude sets a hard edge. He's a power player. I don't even know if Carter ever gets to that point. He's not a power, hard edge setting type, but he knows how to win blocks with agility, knows how to shed blocks, does have to be alert for the pullers. I love watching edge rushers take on pullers, wrong arm them, box them, do all the things that you're supposed to do. I think a lot of that stuff will come with time, but he definitely showed that growth last year at Penn State.
And he's got a lot of room for development as well. Like we'll talk about some guys where the projection is, well, how much better can they be in the NFL because they weren't particularly productive in college? For Abdul Carter, I mean, his move set, his toolbox is not particularly diverse. He has a couple of ways that he wins, right? But he does not have, like, you talk about a guy like Latu last year. That guy had one of the broadest tool sets, like the number of ways he had to win in terms of technique, the number of pass rushing moves that he had was amazing. Carter's only got a couple. Like, think how much better he can be when he develops like 3 or 4 more pass rushing moves. And unlike other guys where you can make a similar argument later on, he's already been a dominant, productive pass rusher. Like, he had 60 something pressures last season with only a couple of ways to win effectively from a technique standpoint. So if we start, stocking his toolbox with 3 or 4 more pass rushing moves that he's comfortable with, I mean, that should theoretically be an amazing potential that is untapped so far. I think that's like an underrated part of Abdul Carter's projection to the next level is he's already really productive. He's already really good, but he's not that refined yet. Obviously, having been, only playing the position for a year, what happens to his game when you add 2 or 3 more pass rushing moves to him?
Yeah, I completely agree. So I think he's already productive. There's some projectability. As we get into your number 2 edge rusher, I just want to bring up the point. I think Carter is also going to be good in today's NFL, where I've mentioned on a few different shows, I'm leaning a little bit more toward if you're athletic and able to shed blocks, handle scrambling quarterbacks. I just tweeted out the stat earlier today about there's just a higher percentage of passes from outside the pocket now versus 3 or 4 years ago. It's incrementally going up. It's not a complete game changer, but it's enough of a game changer that I need somebody, I think, that can play contain, that can mix in a spy every now and again, that can track down scrambling quarterbacks. Abdul Carter has that, and your edge too, Jalon Walker, might be the best in the class at that. So that's who you have, right? Jalon Walker's your edge too, right? Okay, so we're going to Jalon Walker. I have him at 4, but you have him as edge 2. Why is he number 2 for you?
Yeah, I really like him for a couple of reasons. Well, several reasons. So, number one, forget the hybrid stuff. He was a true hybrid deployment at Georgia. They had him as off the ball linebacker. They had him as a true pass rusher, and they would move him between the two. It wasn't one of these situations where we've seen previously where you're like, for the first 2 downs, you play off the ball linebacker, and then 3rd down, you kick down, you rush the passer. They were like moving him around pre-snap, and it would change what the front looked like. Like, they were using him effectively as the chess piece that would change what the defensive front looked like. And they were moving him off the ball, or then they would walk him down and add him to the rush. They would stand him up and move him back, and suddenly the number of down linemen changes. So they used him as like a genuine hybrid player, the likes of which doesn't really exist in the NFL. There's a similar conversation you could have for Jalon Walker to the one people have with Travis Hunter, right? And instead of both ways, like, how much of this hybrid, this 2-way thing can we use? It's like, for Jalon Walker, what could we use him to do on a defense? I don't think people are going to do that, generally speaking. And somebody made this point on Twitter the other day. Like, look at the teams that are picking in the top 10 and tell me which defensive coordinator you think is creative enough to do that and make it work. The answer is they're not, right? So basically throw that out as like a theoretical potential, case study story and just say, I'm moving him to the edge. I'm making him a full-time edge rusher, 6'2", 245 pounds. It's undersized, but it's like within the margins of elite players, right? Von Miller is a few pounds heavier and an inch taller. Robert Mathis was almost the same exact size and was an absolute force as a defensive end in a 4-3 back in the day. Like Hassan Reddick is a very similar size. Like his size is fine to me. And one of the reasons it's fine is look at the tape and show me where it's a problem, right? He turns an exceptionally tight arc. That thing we talked about with Abdul Carter, I think Walker does it even better. And he does it inside as well. Like he's able to turn a corner or even against guards and run this like insanely tight direction hoop to get in on the quarterback. I think his power is actually really good for 245 pounds. He does not get bulldozed by offensive linemen that are 100 pounds heavier than he is. He's got a pretty sick long arm for a guy who doesn't have long arms. His arms, I think, are 32 inches, which is, not particularly long for an edge rusher, but he's got a long arm move that works. His hand use is good, particularly for a guy that's got such little playing experience at any position, forget edge, playing experience, period. There's a really nice sort of fluidity to his movement. He just glides around the place almost to the point where even when he's making hard cuts, it doesn't seem like sudden. It doesn't seem jerky. And I almost think that somehow is deceptive because there's a lot of guys that just miss him when they don't, like he just glides by them and they're like, wait, what? How did he get over there? And then like a couple of small things that nobody ever talks about, but one of them is one of the reasons that I've got another guy I'm a lot lower. He's one of the best tacklers in this draft. Forget edge rusher, like all positions. He is one of the most fundamentally technically sound tacklers in this entire draft. And that is going to get him a lot of plays. There are a lot of plays where he latches on, puts shoulder into thigh pad and brings a guy down with wrap tackle technique. Like he's going to get a lot of plays that other guys don't make because he finishes them.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about Jalon Walker. I think a lot of the discussion around him is almost like what maybe Abdul Carter a year ago. I mean, so my hesitancy on Jalon Walker is, as a data guy, Sam, is the lack of sample size. And
right.
and when you're projected, there's certain positions, maybe corner, where I don't think production matters as much, and there are other parts that are projectable. Edge just has this history of the biggest slam dunks are guys who did it and were productive and guys who are athletic. And you just combine those two things on the edge and you're going to improve your hit rate dramatically. It's just the way it is. And Walker just hasn't done it a ton. You mentioned which teams are, could use him as a hybrid. First off, I don't think Jalon Walker is a slam dunk top 10 player. You have him high. Renner has him high. Dan Brugler has him high. But I also feel like people are also going to look at the way I have looked at him and said, there's some projection there. Maybe he's undersized for certain teams still who might want a 255 plus pounder on the edge. He could fall into the teens, so there are some schemes where I would love to place him. I would love to place him in Raheem Morris's scheme in Atlanta, where they are going to do a little bit more dropping into coverage. Morris comes from the Rams, where they were doing that a ton, as we know with Michael Hoyt, who dropped 40 pounds to be able to do that. So there are some systems where it would be cool to see. But to your point, I don't know if we'll have the opportunity to get there. Brian Flores, of course, the other guy that comes to mind, right? So when you look at it, Andrew Van Ginkel, who had played well in Miami under Brian Flores, played well in Minnesota under Brian Flores at 235, 240 pounds, with that athleticism off the edge and the ability to drop into coverage and rush the passer. Jalon Walker can do all of that. So I don't know that he'll be a scheme fit for everyone. There's still enough defensive coordinators around the NFL who say, yeah, that's still kind of a 3-4 outside backer. For us, we still like a bigger edge rusher. So I don't know what happens to him from where he lands on draft night perspective. But yeah, I love his just natural feel and athleticism for the game. But my hesitancy on Jalon Walker is if you thought he was just a traditional linebacker, which I don't think most of the NFL would. He's inexperienced and not great at that. If you think he's just an edge rusher, he's inexperienced at that. He's got less than 1,000 snaps, under 1,000 snaps in his career, playing a hybrid role, which means, he's only rushed the passer 300 something times. And when you're projecting a guy to the NFL, I would rather see 600 snaps of uber high production for a guy that I'm drafting in the top 10. So that's where I think Jalon Walker's below from an on-field perspective, guys like James Pearce or Mike Green. Even with Mike Green's competition questions, there's just a little more risk associated on the field with Jalon Walker and projecting him to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this before, right? Like all of the guys, once you get beyond Abdul Carter, and even Carter has low sample size in terms of it's been one season, but once you get beyond Carter, there is a red flag of some description to all of the rest of the guys. And the question becomes, so if you're a team that wants a pass rusher in, number 8, say, or, one of these other teams, you're like, well, which is the least scary red flag? Which is the thing we don't care about? Because I think that will differ for every team. Not everyone's going to have the same thing that scares them. Some teams will probably see a low sample size thing as a positive, right? That idea of like, if you give me 2 guys that run the same time to first base, do you want the guy with perfect form or the guy with crappy form? Well, you take the guy with crappy form, because once you give him the good form, he's faster, right? I think some teams are going to see the low sample size thing as a positive. Like, he's barely played and he's this good. Like, give me that. And we can, the upside, the potential, the stuff we were talking about with Abdul Carter, once you add all these moves to his, like, think what it'll be. You and I have been doing this long enough that we also know there's a downside of that, right? That the low sample size thing can be a problem or a risk as much as an upside and a potential play. But I don't think that that's an opinion shared by every team in the NFL. So if you're one of those, you might not give a crap about the low sample size thing. You're like, give me that guy. I've seen all I need to see, right? And then similar, there'll be other teams that like, okay, we'll take the gamble on character or work ethic or whatever. And other teams are like, get that guy off the board immediately, right? So I think once you get beyond Abdul Carter, each one of these guys has here's the positive, and then we got one problem over here that you need to decide whether you care about it or not. For Jalon Walker, I think we just haven't seen that much of it. I think what we have seen is really good, but it is a very low sample size.
Yeah, the other thing I just want to reiterate, which we've talked about with Jalon Walker quite a bit on the show, but as we're just profiling him specifically, I absolutely love what you said, his ability to tackle and his ability to get off blocks, not when he wins the rushes, right? And going back to more quarterbacks leaving the pocket, gap control may be more important than ever. I've explained historically when we were grading at PFF, we really focused from a grading standpoint on one-on-one wins. I still believe that's the most important thing, is beating the guy in front of you one-on-one. The more often you do that, the sacks will get there. You're creating disruption. That is the most valuable thing you can do as a pass rusher. However, when you lose, right? When you lose the one-on-one, the ability to get off the block or to adjust your rush or to just stop the scrambling quarterback by having good gap control, I think Jalon Walker is exceptional at that. The play I highlighted the other day, the play going around where Kelvin Banks from Texas blocks Jalon Walker about 11 yards deep. It's not a loss for Kelvin Banks, but Walker adjusts his rush to pick up the sack. Those plays, I think, are more valuable than ever in today's NFL. So I think that combination, plus this might be too specific, using him in a spy role, which he was fantastic at Georgia, from a week-to-week game plan perspective, the fact that he does have the off-ball linebacker experience, you can move him around, you can use him as a spy, you can move him to the edge. That does add a little bit. Even if you don't have schemes that are going to do this all the time and drop him into coverage 150 times a year, that's fine. He does have this added skill set that even if he doesn't dominate one-on-one, I think he's adding a ton of value off the edge as well.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes that he's a cleanup machine, and in a good way, right? Like, not one of these guys who's a cleanup machine and that's the only production they get. Like, he's a cleanup machine in addition to being a productive pass rusher in his own right. But like, he's incredibly good at chasing down broken plays, at reacting to broken plays, like whether it's as a defensive lineman or as an off the ball linebacker. I think he sifts through trash at the line of scrimmage extremely well. Like, he's able to keep his eyes on the ball or the quarterback and like instinctively move past stuff in his way without having to focus on it. Like that, almost the reverse of, quarterbacks that navigate the pocket, and it's like, well, do they drop their eyes to do it, or are they able to do it without focusing on it, right? Are they able to do it whilst keeping their eyes downfield? Are they able to maneuver around the pocket and get away from all the trash and just do it almost instinctively, like using your periphery? Defense is the same thing, right? Are you able to get through all that crap without looking at it, or do you have to like navigate all the stuff and then put your eyes back on chasing the quarterback? Like, he's able to get through obstructions without having to focus on it, and just does it instinctively. Like, there's a play I tweeted out there where he just like shucks off the block of a running back like it's not even there, and he never like looks at it. He's just like eyes on the quarterback the whole way. Running back comes to pick up the blitz, he just like tosses him to the side, all while focusing over here. Like, the running back never even registers on his attention, other than just like instinctively tossing him to the side and carrying on going.
All right, man. And just to wrap it up on Jalon Walker, just fascinating prospect. I have been starry-eyed, say, with the versatile guys in the past, the Isaiah Simmons of the world, guys who could do multiple things. I do think that makes Jalon Walker a wild card in this draft. Just an interesting player to see how the league values him, how they use him, and just what and the part of there's just not a big sample, and seeing how well teams are able to project him. So interested in Jalon Walker. He's your 2. He's my 4. Who's your number 3 again?
Mike Green.
Yeah,
Mike
so he's
Green from Mark.
My number 2. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, 2, 3, and 4 are very close. I thought about putting each one of them number 2 overall, and ended up settling on this order. Mike Green. So obviously, let's do the same idea, right? We've got a whole lot of positive, and then we've got the one, here's the thing to be concerned about. The positive is like, he plays with this. I love guys that stand out for playing at a different level of intensity, regardless of the position, but he plays with a violence and aggression that nobody else in this edge rusher, not nobody else, almost nobody else in this edge rusher class plays with. He's got a really good motor, but his like impact, violence, and aggression just jumps out of the tape relative to any of these other guys. He's got a nice sort of breadth of pass rushing moves. He can win in a lot of different ways. He's got good speed around the edge. He's got strength. He can string together moves and go from one thing to the next. He's not just, here's the move I'm using on this play, and if you beat that, I'm stoned. He's like, all right, well, if this one doesn't work, I can counter to the next thing. So yeah, I think his change of direction one-on-one with a quarterback can be a little bit iffy. Like, he keeps ending up on the ground in those situations sometimes. That's a theme for some of these players as well. Like, James Pearce has the same issue, or in fact, a worse issue. But yeah, I think Mike Green's got a lot of ability, and the strength of competition is a bit of a concern, but he did show up at the Senior Bowl, and at least for some of it, he did look good against Ohio State. He did. When he played higher levels of competition, he did look the same guy. He didn't disappear the second he stepped up.
Yeah, I agree with so much of that, by the way. The physicality that he plays with in the run game as well, and and as a pass rusher. Also, the bad rushes that he has, he'll get locked up and just get, driven past the quarterback sometimes. But that's another one of those things I think people just need to understand perspective. Like, when you're watching a prospect, they're going to lose 75 to 85% of their reps that are one-on-one. Like, that's just the expectation. So there'll be losses in there. It's about how often do you win and create disruption. For the competition concerns, the highlight reel package, right? When Mike Green gets drafted on draft night, the 2 plays I think they're going to show: Ohio State outside spin move and the quick close on Will Howard for a sack. You just watch that one play. It's like, all right, the burst, explosiveness, the finish against Will Howard. And then, of course, the Senior Bowl play where Josh Carnley is barely even out of his stance, and then he's on his back because of Mike Green's bull rush, and Mike Green's like, I'm good. I showed what I need to do. Even though there's some context around that, it's, Carnley moving to the right side. And, there's a few rushers, Green included in this draft, who are so quick and explosive. They're getting into the pads of a tackle before they're even finishing their pass set. And that's obviously what Green did on that play. So those are the plays you're going to see on draft night that show, yeah, he's really productive at Marshall, but also when the competition questions came up, he showed up as well.
Yeah, and the change of direction thing, like his 3-cone and his short shuttle were really good numbers as well. So in his case, I think it's a technique thing. Like I think that playing with violence and the motor and the relentlessness, I think he gets a little bit carried away when he ends up like one-on-one with a quarterback chasing him down and just sort of overcommits, right? And can get shaken that way. I think if he just has a little bit more patience and discipline in those one-on-one situations, he'll break down more and he won't get left on the floor. So I think that's the thing that can be fixed. His big red flag concern thing is, it's number one, do you care about the strength of competition? I think there's enough evidence there that it's not a thing, right? Ohio State, Senior Bowl, etc. And then two, it's off-field concerns, right? There was a former sexual assault accusation. There's some other stuff out there as well. It's that stuff. And that, for our purposes is a kind of unknown. We don't have enough details. We don't know how to value that. For NFL teams, that's something they need to work on themselves and decide what it is.
And some of the questions that are coming up in the chat, like, hey, why is he not going top 5? What you just mentioned is one. And the second one is, if he was wearing a Buckeyes helmet, I think he is. I think he is going top 5. If you take away the off-field for a minute and you put a Buckeye helmet on him and he played at Ohio State, his production probably drops a little bit, but yeah.
Swap the helmets, right? Swap the helmets between him and Abdul Carter. He would be in the same bucket.
I completely agree. So I think that's the only question, right? And so I would say, I think his production. So when you talk about production, which I think is important and valuable, when you talk about production at a lower level, it needs to be dominant, right? So when you watch Quinyon Mitchell come out, hey, he stayed in the MAC. He never transferred in the transfer era here. He dominated in the MAC. He wasn't just good. He dominated at Toledo. And I think we saw it didn't matter for him. There have been small school players forever in the NFL who were dominant players and then very good NFL players. So I think Mike Green's production, his snap for snap domination in the run game as a pass rusher, is strong enough to check the box of strength of competition, right? He was that good. And if he went to Ohio State or he went to Penn State, it would come down a touch, but it would still be high end, right? So that's where I'm at on Green. He's my 2. Honestly, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up as the best pass rusher. And his ascent is, so here's the other part, Sam, is his ascent, is he not being talked about even higher just because of where he came from? He went from, the first time you heard about him was in the summer. Mike Renner mentioned him. A few people hey, Marshall's got a pass rusher. Hey, Marshall's got a guy. And then the season starts and he's got the sack against Ohio State and a pretty good game against Virginia Tech. Hey, Mike Green from Marshall could go in the first round. Okay, now he's going to the Senior Bowl. Hey, now he just put Josh Connolly on his back. He went from keep an eye on him, maybe first round, maybe top half of the first round, maybe top 10, right? So maybe it's because he started from such a low spot, whereas Abdul Carter, people expected to be the next Micah Parsons at Penn State, and they just kind of locked him in at number 1.
For anyone that doesn't know, Dane Brugler's draft guide called The Beast, for obvious reasons, once you get it, it's an absolute tome of information. It's out there right now. It's the best thing you can buy this draft season in terms of prep and information. Let me just read the bullet point that sort of sums up some of the off-field stuff for Mike Green, because Dane does an amazing amount of kind of background information and prep and all this kind of stuff. So go get the Beast. It's an awesome thing. For Mike Green, NFL teams will put his background under the microscope. Suspended at the start of his second year at Virginia following sexual assault allegations. Green was not charged and the case was suspended. Green has denied any wrongdoing. Also, sexual assault allegation while in high school, no formal charges filed. Shortly before signing day, Virginia requested that he sign a zero tolerance policy. So the reason it's sort of muddy is there's multiple instances, but nothing has come of any of them, right? So how do you value that? Now, from our perspective on the outside, it's complete folly. Like, we have no idea of the details of any of this stuff. An NFL team is going to have to look at this individually and say, well, were these real? Were these, made up stories? What are we talking about here? And each one of them is going to have to make that determination. But that's why this is messy, because it's like there's a guy who's got multiple instances of accusations now, none of which have amounted to anything, but multiple things have sort of put together this pattern, which is a potential red flag for a guy when you're talking about, do we draft this guy in the top 10 of the draft? What is this?
So I have Green at 2. You have him at 3 on your list here. Anything else on Mike Green before we move on to edge 4 for you?
No, that's it. I think if you swapped his helmet with Abdul Carter's, you would be talking about a guy who could go in the top 5 of this draft and be the first edge rusher off the board and be, a blue chip prospect, again, on the field, with that off the field stuff still being a potential red flag.
All right, let's go to your edge 4 here, Sam. You've got Abdul Carter, Jalon Walker, Mike Green, and now edge 4.
Donovan Ezeiraku from Boston College. I really thought about putting him number 2. I really thought about putting Ezeiraku as the second best player, or the second best edge defender in this draft. He might have the best pass rushing ability outside of Abdul Carter. He's quick, he's agile, he's got moves, he's got athleticism. He had Florida State's offensive tackle in an absolute blender in week 1. Like, just watch that tape. It kind of set the stage for what he was going to do for the rest of the season. It's like, this dude is just absolutely annihilating this guy. He's got a really nice cross chop move, gets him to the corner a lot. Like, it frees him up and gets him around the edge of an offensive tackle a ton. But he's also, like, he can win with hands without speed. He can win with push-pull moves, with power, with these inside swim moves. His inside counter is really nice. And there's a few guys in this draft where they've got quite a nice inside counter move, but they don't earn it enough. Like, so I think Dwight Freeney's the best example I can think of really ever of the balance of one and the other. Everyone sort of thinks, when you think, what was Dwight Freeney's like superpower? It was that inside spin, where even at like the age of 35 or whatever, he's still cooking Andrew Whitworth. As Arizona Cardinals legend, Dwight Freeney is barbecuing Andrew Whitworth with this inside spin. But the reason that inside spin was so devastating is because he earned it with his speed rush around the outside, 10 times already. It's like, man, I'm so scared of his speed around the edge because he's low to the ground. He's fast. He's explosive. He can turn the corner. So we start to overset and boom, the spin hits you and you're dead, right? But so many players can't do the first part. It's like, well, my inside move's nice, but like, they don't respect the outside. So it's less effective. Ezeiraku wins with the outside a lot. And so his inside counter is devastating because you are terrified by his outside speed as well. And now he's threatening both sides of your set. So, man, I loved him as a pass rusher.
You mentioned the Florida State game. Go watch Pittsburgh too at the end of the season. 15 pressures, including pressures that were negated. 15. The poor Pittsburgh offensive line had no chance at him. There's some Latu to him, I think, where he's maybe the most technical, best all-around skill set as a pass rusher in this draft. That's how we described Latu last year. Not the best athlete, not the best this or the best that, just the best rusher. Ezeiraku might be that guy as far as just pure skill, right, Sam? Would you agree?
Yeah, but I mean, this was sort of tricky because Latu's workouts ended up being a lot better than people expected them to be. But I feel like Ezeiraku was a better athlete than Latu was, or he at least feels like a better athlete, more explosive. Like, his workout numbers, his change of direction stuff in particular is really, really good. Like, extremely high percentiles, elite numbers for those. Basically, everything was above average or better, but the change of direction stuff in particular was like was elite type of information. So I think you're right that he might be the most technically proficient or developed of any of the pass rushers, but I also feel like he's got athletic juice to him as well. That's why, again, thought about putting him too.
Yeah, the difference is that Ezeiraku's got crazy bend, flexibility. I don't think Latu had that necessarily. I'm just saying from a pure full tool belt, maybe. The one thing I think he lacks, though, is power. And didn't win enough with power. There is one on Pittsburgh where he knocks the right tackle down, but right tackle gets tripped. You always have to see if they get tripped. He doesn't win with power as much, and I think that would be one of the concerns with Ezeiraku, unless you saw something different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely not the strength of his game, but I don't think it's a weakness. Like, I actually think there was more pop in his punch than I was expecting to see.
By the
Like,
way,
I
he showed
expected,
it. He showed it in the run game. I think he showed that
yeah,
power in the run game more than as a pass rusher. So I think he also has it in him.
right. And I think so. Where it shows up, I think, is, there are times where it's like, look, so much of rushing the passer, it feels like just an athleticism exchange, but ultimately, like, pretty much every pass rusher is less strong than the offensive tackle trying to block them, right? Generally, almost all of them, like, they're outweighed by like 100 pounds. Generally speaking, you're not going to be as strong as that guy. So if it's an equal competition, if it's just inertia, if it's my body against his body, he's going to win because he's bigger and stronger than I am. So almost always, in order to look more powerful, you need an advantage in technique, or the fact that you get a running start or whatever. So there are plays where he ends up basically trying to match strength with an offensive tackle, and he definitely just doesn't have the sand in his pants to do that at 248 pounds or whatever. And if an offensive tackle can, like, get into him and lean on him, it's over. Like, he can just fold him, right? But if it's like a hand battle, if it's a punch, if he gets in first, if he's able to get the guy off his chest, I think he's got pop in that punch and he can win with power that way. I just think he doesn't need to do that very often because his quickness is devastating. His technique is devastating. The number of times where he just needs to power through a guy, it's just not his go-to. It's not what he's ever going to go to. But I thought that strength showed up. And I think some of his deficiencies in the run game, like, I thought his awareness was a bigger problem than his power and his lack of strength and, ability to hold the edge. I just think sometimes, a little bit like Abdul Carter early in the season, it was a sort of awareness thing about what's the run concept I'm looking at here. And then by the time he's figured that out, he's already like behind the 8 ball and getting driven away.
Yeah. So look, here's the deal, Sam. The guys that you put at 2 and 3, by the way, I have Ezeiraku at 5. So I'm close here with you. Mike Green and then James. Well, my 2 and 3, Mike Green and James Pearce, who we'll talk about, I should say. They have enough questions that Ezeiraku could be edge 3 off the board, right? I mean, it could be Abdul Carter, Jalon Walker, and then Ezeiraku as the third edge off the board. I've heard when you start to see some of the buzz around the NFL, Daniel Jeremiah put out a tweet just yesterday or sometime this week about, hey, the league's higher or low, all over the place on these few players. Ezeiraku is one of the names that came up. You also hear a lot of people say, hey, this Ezeiraku is going to go a lot higher than people think, right? So you're kind of getting both of these reports. And if you are, so say, just hear me out for a second here. Panthers at 8, Saints at 9. If you're saying, hey, we need an edge rusher in this class, we're going to take advantage of the depth of the edge rush class, and you say we're not going to deal with the Mike Green stuff, we're not going to deal with James Pearce, well, maybe Jalon Walker's in the mix, maybe Ezeiraku's the next guy in the mix, because he's the cleanest. And I talked to someone at BC because I texted a lot of people about Ezeiraku because he just kept popping week 1 against Florida State throughout the year. I'm like, this dude can play. Every time I watched him, I'm like, this guy could just play football. Friend from BC said, yeah, high football IQ. I mean, so I think he's going to go the other way, tick a lot of the off-field boxes, plays the game well. The biggest question mark is going to be, I think, maybe his size. Does he have enough power, compared to some others? I think that's going to be the question, but I think he's pretty clean in a lot of other areas.
Same. And look, you said he could be the third. I don't think it would be crazy to see Ezeiraku taken as a second edge rusher in this draft. I don't think it'll happen, but we're going to talk about the red flag, the thing that's scary about every one of these other guys. Yeah. And if it doesn't have to be one team just like the one team at the top that's going to be picking the edge rusher. It just needs to be like, I don't like any of these red flags. Give me the guy that doesn't have the red flags that we have ranked in a similar place. Again, I don't think it'll happen, but if Ezeiraku was the second edge rusher off the board in this draft, I would not be remotely shocked.
He's another wild card, man. He's another wild card. And I made this point the other day. We end up defining a player by where they got drafted. This guy was 8. This guy was 42. The difference sometimes is what one team decides or what another, if this guy's available, we'll take him at 10, but he's not available, so forget it, whatever. If he did go in the top 10, I actually wouldn't be all that surprised, right? If he went late first. If he went to the Eagles with the last pick, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'd be saying how he does it again, right? So, I could see things being all over the place, but I really like him as a player, and I can see the thought process that eliminates some of the guys that we have ranked higher and says, this guy's cleaner. He's cleaner than Jalon Walker as a rusher. He already has the full skill set that we're kind of hoping Jalon Walker gets to at some point. I could see that thought process maybe in the building somewhere.
Yeah, like every time it comes up in a mock draft, we have Carolina taking an edge rusher at 8. If Carolina doesn't like Jalon Walker, if Carolina is scared by Mike Green's off-field issues, if they're scared by James Pearce Jr., like I can easily see you coming to the conclusion, if you're Carolina, that Ezeiraku is the cleanest pass rusher available at 8 and drafting him there. I don't think it would be nuts. Again, don't think it'll happen, but I would like that pick if they made it. If we're sitting here on draft night, that's the pick at 8. You're going to have a ton of people being like, wow, what a reach. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. I have no problem with it. I think he's worth that.
I mean, especially one of the guys that's not in our top 5, Shemar Stewart. And, we weigh the differences between Ezeiraku and Shemar Stewart. Again, you're hoping Shemar Stewart can learn the stuff that Ezeiraku's doing right now. And you're banking on his doing it with 50 more pounds, by the way, and his athleticism, the theoretical upside versus, say, the more technician that you're going to potentially draft in Ezeiraku right now. So he's your 4, which means James Pearce is your 5 from Tennessee, who's my 3. So Pearce is my 3. He's your 5. Let's talk Pearce. What do you got?
So again, let's start with the thing for him first. Like the narrative on James Pearce is the off-field stuff does not appear to be particularly good. And for him, it seems to be a character / work ethic problem at more than, Mike Green's were multiple sexual assault accusations. James Pearce, it appears to be, is he going to work? Does he want it enough? Like, is it actually is he putting in the effort to be the player that we need him to be at this spot? But it's been an interesting kind of journey, if you like, on the James Pearce thing, because, a year ago, this guy was sort of in the way too early 2025 mock drafts. Like James Pearce Jr. was number 1 overall in some of those drafts. He was a guy that was going to go he was Abdul Carter, right? He was the top guy a year ago heading into this process because of everything that's obvious on tape, like crazy twitchy athlete, guy that ran a 4.5 or whatever it was at the combine, incredibly twitchy, incredibly explosive, straight line speed, burst, all those kinds of things. Really nice closing burst when he gets a clear line of sight to the quarterback. Like that guy could eat up the ground and bring him down. He's got quite a lot of moves as well. Like he's got some ability. Now, when you come from that perspective of like, hey, this guy could be the number 1 pick, and then you start diving into the tape, well, then you go, okay, well, there's more flaws here than I'm comfortable with, right? He looks sort of Arden Key levels of skinny, right? And that, as much as I don't think weight, just a number, right? He's 243 pounds. We're like Jalon Walker at 248 is fine. So what difference does 5 pounds make? I don't think weight is a particularly big thing for edge rushers, but skinny light scares me. Those are the guys that have had a track record of not working out tremendously well. You think the sort of Shalik Calhouns of the world and even Arden Keys, like these guys are long and light and just do not have the weight to hold up on the edge against these big offensive tackles who are also long, right? Like in order to, it's not like you're going to win a length battle against an offensive tackle with 35-inch arms. You're going to be, generally speaking, in the same area if you're a long edge rusher. Only the guy now outweighs you by 100 pounds, so you're going to lose. So that's a little bit scary. I do think he packs a bigger punch than Arden Key. Like he's got more power and strength to him, but that's a little bit concerning. And then like he's just got so many plays where he does not get the guy on the ground. Like it's weird. I don't know if his turning circle is amazing, but like I keep coming back to this play. I've mentioned it a bunch of times, but the Arkansas quarterback, he had a clean one-on-one unblocked run at him. and that guy shaked him out of his shoes and Pearce just face planted. Like, that's okay. It's an athletic quarterback, but it's a quarterback one-on-one in the open field, and you didn't touch him. Like, not only did you not like end the play, kill him, but you didn't even like you just fell over and face planted. Like, you didn't affect the play other than he took some time out of his day to make you look ridiculous before running out into the open space that you vacated. That's a problem. That can't happen.
There's some recklessness, I would say, to his play style: run game, pass game, tackling. So you mentioned the Brandon Graham comp, which are, longtime listeners might understand, not body type or anything like that, but the style in that the guy's going to have he'll have a lot of what I like to call them half-man wins, right? So you're not completely defeating the tackle and getting past him, but you're getting the corner, right? You're getting around the corner. There's still some engagement there. Now, can you disengage and finish the play? That's where I think he struggles, so he disrupts and then might get washed out. So he might force the quarterback to move, but then they're, break and contain or whatever it is. So there's some kind of the opposite of what we described with Jalon Walker, where I think Jalon Walker is outstanding at that, shedding the block and making sure that the QB doesn't escape. Pearce has some issues, whether it is one-on-one trying to tackle or just in those half-man wins trying to keep his balance. But I agree with a lot of what you said too. I thought watching him last year and into this year, I'm like, man, this dude looks like a wide receiver. I was concerned his weight, because you mentioned weight's just a number. I was concerned it would be in the 220 something. I thought we were going to say this dude's 6'5", 227, 6'4", 225. And then I'd be looking through the archive. Has anybody done this? Has anybody done this at 225? And there's not many, if any. So the fact that he's over 240, fine. But he feels small, right? He feels small. I don't think he's bad against the run. It's just, I think there is a finishing issue, a tackling issue. I think there's some recklessness to his game. But I think there's enough disruption to his game that it balances it out. I was watching him move last year. I was trying to think of somebody. It might be Von Miller, somebody that was that smooth, winning to the outside and then winning on an inside counter, that with the smoothness with which he puts his foot in the ground, gets inside a tackle, was outstanding for him. Like, I get why people were talking about him number one overall. Now you add in the effort level thing and the off the field, and people didn't love him at Tennessee. And he also has a small sample. He played under 1,000 snaps. Is that just Tennessee's rotation? Why weren't they relying on him for more than 50 snaps per game? All of those are fair questions as well.
Yeah, so it's funny, like the kind of journey of analysis with him. On the one hand, you look at the previous hype levels where it was number one overall pick, top pass rusher off the board kind of thing. Like, okay, look, there's enough flaws on the tape that I think that's a bit overkill. But I almost feel like we've gone too far in the other direction now, where it's like everyone's now hyper focused on the flaws. It's like, well, why doesn't he finish that well? Why doesn't is his change of direction great? Is he too light? And now it's like, okay, yeah, look, those are problems. Like, I admit those are concerns or reasons why I'm not putting him up there with Abdul Carter. But again, in this draft in particular, right? And where does the consensus board have him? It's got him below the two other sort of freak show guys, right? Yeah, so Shemar Stewart is 14 on the consensus board. Mykel Williams is 15, and James Pearce Jr. is now down at 26. Now, look, who knows how much of that is being driven by the off-field stuff. But if we limit it to on the field for a moment, yes, there are concerns by his tape, but not to the point where I'm willing to drop him below the other guys whose tape is also concerning. It's like,
right,
let's tap the brakes on how far we're concerned by James Pearce, because the good is really good. Like, let's not get out of control. Like, his burst and explosion and twitchiness, like, that is freaky. So I just think, look, we've been at two different extremes for James Pearce, and he probably belongs somewhere in the middle, at least on the field, right? He was probably never really deserving of the number one overall pick type of hype, but I don't think he's a second round pick either. He's firmly a middle of the first round caliber player who in back-to-back seasons had PFF pass rushing grades of like 90 above and slightly below one given year, 50 plus pressures, in both seasons with not a ton of pass rushing snaps. Like that's going to be an extremely good pass rushing win rate. I haven't checked exactly what it is. I'll see if I can load that up on the fly, but this is somebody that's been incredibly productive despite not being the most well-rounded technician in the world. Like, let's not go overboard.
I have his pass rush win rate because someone in the chat said he reminds me of K'Lavon Chaisson, or that's the comp. I was like, nothing close to Chaisson for me, because
so much more productive.
Pearce's pass rush win rate is 22% for back-to-back years. Chaisson finished at 13. So when we get to Shemar Stewart, who's right around 13 at his best, all I'm saying, the profile for a first-round successful edge rusher very rarely is unproductive as K'Lavon Chaisson, very rarely is unproductive as Trayvon Walker, Tyree Wilson for his career, or Shemar Stewart. They profile exactly how James Pearce has profiled in his production.
I mean, I can give you better than that. Over the last 2 years combined, right, his pass rush win rate is 23.2%, which is behind Abdul Carter at 23.5%, and he has a better pressure rate with that pass rush win rate. So he has been, this is again, like, let's remember what the kind of given is with James Pearce. Yes, there are concerns, and why don't you get as many sacks as it looks like you should? But let's remember, he has been extremely productive. Like, this is someone that gets an absolute ton of pressure, despite all of these things that we're saying might be problems, right? The relative lack of size, the relative lack of turning them into sacks, the relative lack of playing time, the relative lack of sample size. There's quite a lot to be concerned about. But over here, we've got a guy who's been one of the most productive pass rushers in this draft class.
The one thing I'll add about Pearce, so uber productive. So let me answer this. People are asking about the character concerns. I think it's unfair to you haven't even mentioned Jermaine Burton in the same sentence as James Pearce. I don't think it's that level. No, but Burton is closer to like Isaiah Bond with Texas, where you're at multiple spots and no one's saying anything good about you, and they're not really believers in you. The Pearce thing is all around, does he love the game enough? And that could be from levels of, in Burton's case, the guy likes the nightlife, right? Versus Pearce might just not love the game enough. And in that scout speak, Sam, is like, do I want to spend a top 15 pick on this guy? That's where I feel like it's a little softer than some of the other extremes. That's what I'm getting. And I just want to add, this is where, because Dane Brugler in the Beast, as you mentioned, one of the weaknesses, interview process will be crucial. One NFL scout says, quote, I want to be convinced that he loves this, end quote. It's kind of the extent of what Dane's bringing up here. It's a lot of, does he love the game enough?
Yeah. Okay. So you're right. I think it isn't where Jermaine Burton's was, where literally everybody that you spoke to did not have a good word to say about him. And some people that were
he's off our board. Like, he's going to be off half the boards in the league. Like, we're not even going to play in that world.
Yes. Right. Including like his coach, right? Like, people directly connected to Burton were not saying positive things about him. And in fact, we're saying pretty negative things about him. So that was about as extreme as you can get. Now, where I would push back on you a little bit is now, okay, number one, I think you're right. It's interesting that the extent of it in Dane's piece is pretty small. Like, I actually expected some more details on that in the Beast because of how thorough Dane is and how much information he gets and all that kind of stuff. So that is notable that Dane sort of limits it to that world of like, oh, does he love this enough? Right. Where I would push back is the does he love it enough takes you into the world of like bad face of like bullshit scout terms, right? Where it's like, oh, look, he plays a trumpet. That's a red flag because he obviously is not spending all his time playing football. We can't have that. So there's a world where you start saying, does he love it enough? And it just lumps it into this bucket of like ridiculous things that scouts ask that don't actually mean anything. I don't think it's that, because I think there's more information out there. You know, whether Bob McGinn's scouting reports where he talks to a bunch of anonymous scouts and they just unload on guys. There have been a lot where it's more detailed than that. It's not just like, hey, he also likes, playing video games, or he also likes studying, World War II history. It's like, no, there's some problems here. It's like, he doesn't always show up to practice. He doesn't, necessarily learn the playbook enough. Like, there are some actual work ethic problems that we're seeing talked about. Now, again, it's interesting that did not show up in Dane's report. So like Mike Green, it's messy, right? It's not just this clean, like Jermaine Burton was easy. Everyone thinks this guy's an asshole. We can do that's easy. This is more complicated than that, where it's like in some places, it's not, it's not being made to be a big deal. In other places, it's like, there are people at Tennessee that didn't like the way this guy was doing was working hard enough, right? And that is arguably why he wasn't, playing that every down role that you were talking about. Like, it's awkward. It's not as clean as some other guys, but I do think it's more than just, hey, he also has a hobby.
Let me just wrap up the Pearce discussion right here. There's a level of production from a PFF lens that is really, really strong. There's a level of production from a finishing plays standpoint that I think is concerning. And if I'm going to personally value that more these days, the shed blocks, finish plays, he's missing that. The other part of his production that's concerning for me is how often he jumps the snap. Remember former first rounder D Ford, who famously was offsides in an AFC championship for the Chiefs. D Ford used to jump the snap, and you would say, this guy's got great burst, but he also had this anticipation, which tends to not work as well at the NFL level. He was a snap jumper at Auburn, undersized, get up the field burst type of guy, had a lot of free pressures because he would do that. I think Pearce has some of that as well, which is one of those things which is like good anticipation, maybe when you're playing at home, doesn't always work on the road. And so it actually can inflate production a little bit if you're more of a guesser and you could, get drawn off sides, whatever it might be. So that's the other last concern I have on James Pearce. So review your top 5 one more time for me, Sam. I'll review mine and we'll get into 6 through 10.
Abdul Carter, Penn State, number 1. Jalon Walker from Georgia, number 2. Mike Green from Marshall, number 3. Donovan Ezeiraku from Boston College, number 4. And then James Pearce Jr. from Tennessee, number 5.
And like an old married couple, we have the same top 5. We have the same 6 through 10, just different orders. Abdul Carter, Mike Green, James Pearce, Jalon Walker, Donovan Ezeiraku. For me, we'll get into 6 through 10 in just a minute here, but I'm going to tell you about our friends over at Zbioitics. Surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after drinks with friends. It's their pre-alcohol. Zbioitics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. You drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration. That's to blame for rough days after drinking. And the pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. So just remember to drink your pre-alcohol as your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and then you'll feel your best the next day. We saw this in action during the scouting combine. Had our friend Jeremy try it out after long nights in Indy. It worked great. So you guys could try it out as well. Spring is here, which means more opportunities to celebrate the warmer weather. Before drinks on the patio, that tropical vacation, or your best friend's wedding, don't forget your Zbiotics pre-alcohol. Drink one before you drink and wake up feeling great the next day. Go to zbiotics.com/checkthemic to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Check the Mic at checkout. Zbiotics is backed by 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/checkthemic. Use code checkthemic at checkout for 15% off. All right, Sam, let's give me your 6 through 10 here, and then let's see how similar our orders are.
You're back to HD. For a while, it looked like you were being filmed through like a 2005 cell phone camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what Robo Steve means. So that ruined my entire read.
The audio is fine. It's just that it's like something like a flip phone. You were being filmed on by one of those for a while. Sorry, I'm going 6 through 10. Is that what we're doing here?
Yes, please.
All right. Number 6, Bradyn Swinson from LSU. I'm pushing him this high.
Wow. A major upset.
Number 7, Mykel Williams from Georgia. Number 8, Shemar Stewart from Texas A&M. Number 9, Landon Jackson from Arkansas. And then number 10, I ended up going with Nic Scourton from Texas A&M. And I flipped it. I did it at the last second. It's such a last second change. It's not even written that way on my notes.
Thinking that I would. You were trying to mix it up. You were trying to predict what I was going to do and change it, and you couldn't. We're the same thing, except flip Mykel Williams and Bradyn Swinson.
Really?
I had Swinson.
Yeah,
I liked Swinson that much after getting back into his film. Mykel Williams 6, Swinson 7, and then Shemar Stewart, Landon Jackson, Nic Scourton. There are other players I really wanted to put at 8 through 10. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to put Shemar Stewart. We'll discuss all of them. So let's start with your number 6, Bradyn Swinson. You may be the highest on Swinson from anybody that I've seen to this point.
I really liked Bradyn Swinson. Good athlete, not spectacular, but good. I thought he's just another guy that's extremely well polished, like good technician, really good toolbox of moves. He's got a nice two-handed swipe, a club swim, a bull rush, cross chop, ghost. He does a really nice where he pushes the arms of the tackles up a lot, just gets them completely out leveraged. He's got really good hands. So not as good as Ezeiraku at either the moves or the athleticism, but like pretty close behind him in both. I thought he tracks the quarterback really well. Like he alters the path of his rush to account for what's happening on the play in a really good way. Makes a lot of sort of not even cleanup plays, but just plays where it's like it's not where he was trying to get to the first place, right? Like the quarterback stepped up into the pocket, he's been able to move back, counter, and adjust for it. He's got a really good motor, gets himself back into multiple plays where he was kind of, watched by the pocket or the initial move was countered. But he's got decent strength, can power through some loose technique. But again, 255 pounds, 6'4", not the strongest guy in the world. So he's not going to power through offensive tackles if he doesn't have the technique to do it. Good bend and dip. He can get around the corner. Again, he's not elite in that regard. He's not Abdul Carter. He's not Jalon Walker, but he's good. It got better every year of his career. Last year was by far his best season. Also the most playing time he's had. He's really good.
Yeah. The first time he really popped to me was week 1 last year. He wears number 4 for LSU. And I mentioned this to you off air, right? Harold Perkins, the guy who was a star as a freshman, kind of moved to linebacker more as a sophomore, but he was supposed to be an elite pass rusher, a guy that we're talking about in the draft probably for next year. And he wore number 4 prior to 2024. And there's a great pass rush by number 4 against USC. And I think I actually went all the way to the Twitter sphere. I'm like, oh, great pass rush by Harold Perkins. I'm like, wait, no, he switched his number, and that's Bradyn Swinson. So right off the bat, I'm like, he looks like Perkins, who, by the way, is undersized and weighs about 210, right? So Swinson looked like he had the burst of this, elite sophomore, junior pass rusher who's undersized. And that was the first time he really popped to me. And then, I was surprised by his athleticism and how good that was. And then some of the power, right? He didn't always win with power, but he showed it just enough. And you mentioned he's got the whole bag of tools. And I also think in the run game, he's pretty sharp there too, plays with low pads. I love watching edges take on pullers and how they handle that. Because sometimes you're asked to wrong arm it and get inside the puller. Sometimes you're asked to stand firm, set a hard edge, force the ball back inside. I've seen him do both at a pretty high level. I love watching how the edge rushers take on pullers. He does that extremely well. So I liked Swinson more than I expected. So I ended up putting him all the way up at 7. And I had heard you talk him up. I knew that you were going to have him high. I was joking. You might have him at 3. You didn't go that crazy with it, but I liked Swinson more than I anticipated the more I broke him down.
And by the way, you're a big tiers guy. The tiers to me in this pass rush group, let's call Abdul Carter number 1, tier 1 by himself, effectively. I think the next group are all in a tier together. The Jalon Walker, Mike Green, Ezeiraku. Certainly those 3, I think, are on a tier. Maybe Pearce is in that tier, or maybe he's splitting a couple of tiers. But then I think when you get to 6, there's another tier starts. Like this is a gap between the guys above in the top 5. And then to me, Bradyn Swinson is the next of the next tiers. But it's the group that we talked about, Swinson, Williams, Stewart, Landon Jackson, that's another tier distinct from that first group. So the top 5 cutoff is actually in the right place in terms of the tiers of this group as well, to me anyway.
Yeah, the only place I would disagree there is my 6 is Mykel Williams. I would put there's a top 6. I would say there's a separation, I would say, between Mykel Williams and this next group. So anything else on Swinson before we get to Mykel and why he's probably lower for us maybe than some others?
Yeah, no, I just think by definition now, he has to be one of the most underrated players in the draft to me. He's 67 on the consensus board. He's, God, what is that? Like edge 10, 12, like 12 or something. I just think he's a much better player than that. Like I think people are sleeping on how good Swinson is. I've seen some people talking him up recently. I think maybe people are starting to get more on the Bradyn Swinson bandwagon, but I feel like his stock is going to be going up as we get towards the draft.
All right, let's go to your number 7's Mykel Williams. He's my number 6 before we have the identical 8 through 10. Mykel Williams was a guy, Nate Tice liked him as maybe his best player, favorite player in the draft during the offseason. He wasn't as productive this year because he was playing on an ankle. You could see the ankle injury. He's another one of those projectable Georgia type of players, different from Jalon Walker in that Walker's more undersized and explosive. Mykel Williams is more of a power player, more of a length winner, length type of player. He's not a full Trayvon Walker clone where it's length and crazy athleticism. But yeah, I think Mykel Williams, interesting prospect who, another one of those guys you would describe as best football, maybe ahead of him. I liked him a little bit more than you, Sam. So where do you have Mykel here? Or what do you have
so there were a few guys for whom I went back to previous year's tapes, more to look at because knowing things about their most recent season. So Williams, the narrative had been out there. He'd had this ankle injury. He'd been playing hurt all last year. As you said, it showed up. You could kind of see it. And I think that's so you go back. All right, well, let's look at the year before and let's see, if there's a higher level of potential out there. Look, he's big, he's long, he's athletic, he's pretty rangy. 6'5", 260 was what he measured at the combine, I think. But I don't see the elite physical traits other than the size. Like he's not like he's slow, but he's not this freak athlete that I think a lot of people are making him out to be. He's got good hands, certainly when it compares to Shemar Stewart, I think, when it comes to rushing the passer. He can shed with those hands. He can win inside and outside. He's got a couple of good moves. He's got an inside swing move that he uses a lot. He's got some outside swipes. There's not a ton of, I think, overwhelming power at that size. Like for a bigger pass rusher relative to some of these guys, he doesn't just bull rush through through offensive tackles. I think there's some good there. I don't see the special. I think for a guy that doesn't have the kind of crazy production, I don't know. I think people are making too much over the kind of caliber of athlete that he is.
Yeah, it was tough to separate because in my notes a lot, I'm like, the burst isn't really there. And I did see it at times in 2023. I think, he first really showed up speed to power for me in that bowl game when they were playing FSU's backups. But you still kind of saw what his potential was in that game. And he was another guy, like I was talking about with Abdul Carter. I'm like, oh boy, here's the next guy. I'm going to need to be lower. This is the next projectable guy. And Steve's going to be the wet blanket to all the optimism around this projectable pass rusher who's not all that productive. But I ended up, I still think he's a good player. I think he's more of a high floor type of player than a, high floor with some ceiling as well. Because I think he is very good against the run. I think he has all the physical tools like Jadeveon Clowney's profile. When Clowney played in the NFL, he was always a much better run defender than pass rusher. He would get his 8 sack seasons. He would have 10 sack seasons. He would have 3 sack seasons, Clowney. He was always pretty stout against the run. I think Mykel can at least do that. And there's some other players later who aren't in the top 10 who have that type of profile, but they don't have, I don't think, the upside as a pass rusher. So I think Mykel Williams' upside comes in 2 different places. I think he's a pretty good pass rusher who can be productive. I think he can just learn how to play the run better too. I think he has the physical skills. He would get grimy against tackles and guards. The edges that line up at 3 technique, 4 technique, right over the tackle or just inside the tackle and have to, get dirty sometimes in the run game. He would do some of that. So I think there's a lot to like about him, but more of a high floor. I think you'll get a good run defender, but with the long arm pops, he's, developed that pass rush skill set a little bit more. I think he can develop there. So I think that's where his skill set is.
Jadeveon Clowney is actually a really good comp for him. I kind of like that. I don't think he's necessarily. I think Clowney was a slightly better athlete again, which is part of the whole concern about Mykel Williams. Williams and Stewart, who I'm putting in similar buckets they're both sort of billed as, look, these are unproductive players who are extremely good athletes and therefore will become better NFL players. I don't think so. Depends how you measure the lack of productivity. Like Mykel Williams has had some sacks, certainly relative to Shemar Stewart, but he hasn't been productive as a pass rusher at all. In terms of, pressure rate, those kinds of things. Like, he doesn't have a ton of pressures, doesn't have a good PFF pass rushing grade, and he isn't the caliber of athlete I think that Shemar Stewart is, or that some of these other guys that he's been comped to, Trayvon Walker or whatever. So that part is a little bit weird. But and Clowney, I think, was similar, where I think his 40 was really good, but actually, and his explosive numbers were good, but actually his change of direction numbers were rough. And that's one of the things I think the Clowney is actually shown at the NFL level. He doesn't have the change of direction, the lateral fluidity, the bend that some of these other guys do for a guy that was kind of billed as the super athlete. He's big and he's strong and he's pretty fast, and he's good linearly. I feel similarly with Mykel Williams, where he's pretty big, but I don't see this like fluid movement, this bendiness, this ability to like really be a dynamic pass rusher. But I think you're right. He can be like a good, impactful, power, run defending, useful member of a rotation.
Yeah, that's where I see him. And I think the upside's there in that the pass rush toolbox for Mykel Williams is still somewhat lacking. And he's another guy. I think he's right around 1,000 snaps. And so we'll talk about it later when we talk about some of our sleepers. There's some like really, really inexperienced players in this draft, like record-setting inexperience. We're going to highlight in a minute, in a few, maybe in an hour. But there's also some relative inexperience of 900 snaps for Pearce, Jalon Walker, and Mykel Williams are all between 900 and 1,100 snaps. That is an inexperienced group. So they've all had some level of pretty good production, but inexperience. And I think there's something to that versus a guy that would normally have 2,000 snaps or 1,800 snaps at this point. That matters a little bit, I think, when you're trying to project these guys. So I think that's one of the things that might work in Mykel's favor as well.
So Mykel Williams for the last 2 years has a pass rush win rate of 11.9% according to PFF. That's worse than Shemar Stewart's. So when I say, we are talking about a guy that's every bit as unproductive as Shemar Stewart is, and he's a worse athlete, I think. So I think, there's some upside play there, but I don't think the upside is necessarily as high as people are pointing it out to be, or even as high as Stewart's is.
And I explained that away a little bit with the ankle. I mean, the ankle injury was like week 1 against Clemson. It was early this past season. So I think that's a big part of it for Mykel Williams, trying to play through the injury.
But he wasn't productive the year before either.
I understand. I mean, look, this is a guy that could be profiled as a top 3 edge who's 7 on your board, 6 on mine. I mean, there's a reason why he's lower for me. I think the floor's high. It'll honestly probably be a similar discussion with what we have about Shemar Stewart, who we both have at 8. So let's get into the Shemar Stewart discussion. He's at 8 for us. He'll be much higher for a lot of other people.
But to wrap up the Mykel Williams thing, I don't think the ceiling is as high as people think it is, but I think the floor is pretty high. Like you comped him to Clowney. You talked about him as a solid run defender. I think, and the physical tools are legit in terms of starting caliber, even if they're not special. So I think he will be a productive player, not necessarily a productive pass rusher. So that's why, if the flaws that we're pointing out are the lack of elite tools is why he's not in my top 5. But it's also like the floor and the bottom line of what he's going to be, I think, keeps him high enough that you're not saying, well, he's the 17th best edge rusher in this draft or whatever.
And he'll turn 21 in June. So so he'll be a young 21 for the season. I think the age thing matters. Look, age matters for certain positions versus others. I think on the edge, it does matter a little bit. And so that's why there's also some of that projectability with him there. So, all right, man, let's go. Edge 8 for both of us now is Shemar Stewart. You're going to get answers all over the place for Shemar. Where are you on him?
So a lot of his athleticism shows up, right? It's visible. He is big, twitchy, visibly impressive when he's on the field. The explosiveness is impressive. The strength and the power, dude, he can run over offensive tackles. Like, he can take these guys and just bull rush them and put them on skates in a way I don't think anybody else in this draft class could do. Like, his power is absolutely legit. He rocks offensive tackles back. He can like completely run over them. Now, and the other thing that was interesting to me is, so my overall impression is linear straight line explosiveness definitely there. I wonder if he has change of direction. And there have been some players before where that's been true. What's different about him, though, is he's got this really nice like Euro step where he can explosively jump laterally in a big distance. Like, he can completely cross a lineman's face with this Euro step. He can shoot from a shade into a gap. Like, he can go a long way laterally on that. It's just that I don't think he has that bend, the dip, the running the hoop type of thing. And it's a slightly different. This is why I think the 3-cone and the short shuttle, which ostensibly both measure short shuttle or short area change of direction, they're different movements and they're different tests, because I think they're trying to measure those two different aspects, right? One is trying to measure if you can like run that hoop, run that arc and run a tight corner. The other one is trying to measure if you can start laterally and do that. I think Stewart can do that lateral kind of Euro step agility. I don't think he can necessarily turn the corner. And it's interesting that in all of his pre-draft stuff, he's done nothing, no change of direction stuff, right? Nothing at the combine, nothing at his pro day, no drills that would potentially highlight it or expose it. He's only done the linear straight line explosive stuff. So I think, look, the power stuff, the straight line explosiveness, really, really impressive. I do, though, wonder if he can actually change direction. And if we're, again, the Trayvon Walker comps are going to write themselves because they're broadly speaking the same height, the same weight, and have the same 40 time-ish, right? But that's different. Trayvon Walker the spider chart was a circle. He was good at everything. Every aspect of his profile was elite. I suspect if we ever got the numbers for Shemar Stewart, and it's guesswork here, but it's guesswork from the tape and the fact that he hasn't put it on film anywhere or numbers anywhere, I suspect his change of direction testing numbers would not be elite numbers.
I think he's probably somewhere between Trayvon Walker and Tyree Wilson. They're the two most famous examples of us pushing back on those guys as top 10 picks.
Right.
They're projectable. Now, yeah. I don't even want to get into it right now. Trayvon Walker just had his 5th-year option picked up by the Jags. I think he's going to sign a big contract. So, I mean, I think we're still going to end up differing from many. Some people are going to agree with us on Trayvon Walker hasn't lived up to the hype and hasn't been a great player, but it is the best thing he's done is the durability, playing 800 plus snaps per season, which has nothing to do with his athleticism and his actual skill set that he was drafted for. Don't even need to get into whether or not he was a success or not, but the reason why Stewart's 8 for me and probably for you is production is a projection, and production isn't sack totals. It is winning consistently off the edge. Now, he had way more pressure and a higher pressure rate and a higher win rate the last 2 years, higher than what Trayvon Walker had coming out. And I would say, again, looking at the Tyree Wilson comp, Tyree Wilson had a good final season at Texas Tech. I didn't check it exactly, but I think Shemar Stewart's final 2 seasons compared to Tyree Wilson's final 2 seasons probably better. The other difference, and there's a reason why Shemar Stewart's in between those two players is prospects, right? Stewart's 21. Tyree Wilson had his breakout season at 23. So his theoretical upside that everybody talked about was like, well, this is a 23-year-old, right? Like, some of these guys are going to be in year 2 in the NFL when they're 23 years old, like Tyree Wilson was when he went number 7 overall. So that is in Stewart's favor, the same way we talked about with Mykel Williams. He's still young. He was a former 5-star and looks like it, man. I mean, some of the plays that he has are out of this world good. As you mentioned, the straight line, the get off that he has, which leads to speed to power, the get off getting down the line, working the backside against the run. I mean, the highlight reel is outstanding. So all of that I get, but not only did he not win often enough for me, for what first-round edge rushers usually win like, just straight up win the one-on-ones, he also didn't finish. So what you're saying is that change of direction that's where the sack totals come in. With Trayvon Walker, you could at least say change of direction's good enough. If he's not going to win the one-on-one in today's NFL, like he's the cleanup guy. He's really good at being the cleanup guy. I don't know if Shemar Stewart has that level in him other than straight line tracking down quarterbacks. So that's where every time I'm like, I kind of get, like, I get the disruption aspect of it. I get what he brings to the table, but it's like bull in the china shop type of disruption where I don't know if he'll ever be a play finisher. And I don't even know if he's disruptive enough to truly win with an inside counter and win with other moves off the edge to warrant the top first round, but top 15 pick that, he's projected to be.
It's like every positive that you like about him, there's a negative that makes you go, but that might not matter. Right? Like
yeah.
Another reason that the Trayvon Walker thing makes some sense is, remember at draft time, there were a ton of people being like, look at all the snaps inside. Like the defense was playing him as this 3-4 defensive end where he's not on the edge. You can't actually rush the passer. And that's why his production is really bad. I mean, Texas A&M did that to Shemar Stewart as well. About 1 in every 4 of his snaps was lined up kind of inside. And that, I didn't like him there at all. Like, I think that did absolutely hamper his pass rushing ability and production. And I mean, his numbers were better on the edge. If you look at it, like just when he lines up truly on the edge as opposed to inside, they still weren't good. So it's not like that, we're not talking about a guy who was actually good on the edge and then all the snaps inside just like muddy the production. He was definitely better on the edge. He still wasn't productive. But so I think you can say, look, those plays inside did not help him. And that's part of the problem. But you put him on the edge and you're like, okay, what I want to see and what I'm not seeing because of potentially this lack of change of direction or bendiness is, where are the plays where he's just trying to run that arc on the outside, where he's trying to do a legit speed rush and just beat the guy around the corner. Number one, there aren't many of them at all, right? Like, he doesn't do it very often. Now, number two, the plays you can find where he does try, it doesn't tend to go well, right? He gave it a shot against Membu, and Membu just folded him to the turf, like just bent, like collapsed on him and just immediately erased him. He did it against LSU as well on a 3-man 3rd and 15, like obvious pass rushing situation. You're just trying to get around the guy on the outside and got nowhere. And that wasn't even against Will Campbell on the left side. It was the other side of the line, who admit it's still a prospect, but not against the guy that's supposed to go in the top 10, right? So the plays where you can find where he is trying to be that sort of speed edge rush to the outside, which he should be able to do at that 40 time and get off and burst, doesn't go well at all. So I do wonder if you're going to have this guy who is, again, he's limited. He is explosive. He's powerful. He's able to bull rush right through a dude, but he doesn't change directions particularly well. He also falls off so many tackles. It's unbelievable the number of plays where he does not finish. Like, he's got 2 hands holding onto the quarterback and just at 270 pounds, and somehow the guy just gets out of the tackle. Like, these gloves have sticky, like they have tack to them. Just hold on. I don't understand how a guy that powerful falls off so many tackles.
The one other comp I'll throw out there, and it's not perfectly clean, but Josh Sweat, who just signed a big deal with Arizona, went to the Eagles in the 4th round. And he was another guy that was kind of productive in college, but more in the run game than as a pass rusher. Good run defender, good athlete, good length, and a projectable athlete. And he just, was a Super Bowl hero. Now, look, I still don't think Josh Sweat is an elite pass rusher despite what he got paid. He's a good pass rusher in the NFL. Took him a couple of years, was a part of a rotation. PFF grade peaked at 76, 80 as a pass rusher. He's been a pretty good player. He's a good player. Maybe not what he's worth, but he's a good player. I think that's the other guy where Stewart can be a disruptive run defender, similar to Mykel Williams. So it's weird that I would say he's like at a high floor because I think he's disruptive. But at the same time, there's a theoretical ceiling with Shemar Stewart as well. So he's another guy that I'm going to say, I get him. I get it. I understand. Harry, you got any Shemar Stewart thoughts? I needed some batteries for my mouse, so he had to drop them off. Thanks, Harry. So I get Shemar Stewart, but as I said with the Trayvon Walkers and the Tyree Wilsons, I would rather let someone else try to develop him. That's just where I am with Shemar Stewart. I get it. Like, I'm okay with 3 years from now being like, oh, Steve, you were low on Shemar Stewart. I'm like, I'm okay with that. That is in his range of outcomes. I understand it. I would rather let someone else do it.
I think you're right that he is on the spectrum that has Trayvon Walker and Tyree Wilson on it. I think he's between the two of them. And like any of the three, there's a point where I would be willing to draft them. I suspect that point is lower than other people will. So for practical purposes, I'm just going to let somebody else take that chance. But there's absolutely a point where I would roll the dice and say, yeah, I'm going to give Shemar Stewart a shot and see if we can make it work. But like, for example, right, Chris Sims has got his edge rusher rankings out today. Chris Sims has Shemar Stewart as edge number 3. I think it was 3. Dane Brugler has him as one of the top edges and like one of the top 10 players on the board overall.
Sorry, you told me Sims had him at 2. I think Dane has.
Okay, yeah, maybe it was 2.
Yeah.
Point being, like, other guys have got this guy as a top 10 draft pick, as a guy who's going to go like as elite. His stock on the consensus board is still 15, top 15 rather. What I will say, there every now and again you get players where when you read like the pros and cons of them, and then look to like where these people are being projected, most of the time they match, right? Like, here's a list of pros and then a couple of cons, and ergo, this guy's a top 5 draft pick overall. That makes sense, right? Or this guy's got a few positives and he's got quite a lot of negatives. Therefore, he's being projected day 3, right? Every now and again, you'll get a player where that doesn't match. Like, the guy has either way more cons than pros and he's still ranked really high, or the reverse. That's Shemar Stewart, where if you listen to people list out where he's good, where he's bad, like the pros and cons, and then look at where they have him ranked overall, it doesn't mesh. It doesn't gel. And I think that's where you start to get these guys that just go, but look at him. Like I know it's not actually that good right now, right? On the other hand, have you seen this play, right? I think that's basically what happens with Shemar Stewart. You watch his tape, you write your notes, you plot it all out, and you're like, okay, if I gave that to a random person who hadn't watched the tape and said, where should this guy get drafted based off these notes, the guy would not be saying top 10. And then, but you watch the play and you're like, man, look at that play. Like, look at that play. If we could just get 100 more of them, like, we'd be cooking. I think that's what happens.
Let me just throw 2 more names out there, because Stewart did go to the Senior Bowl and had the freak rush, and then he left, right? He was like, bags packed. I showed what I needed to show. Jermaine Johnson was a guy who had just okay production in his career, good final season, and then showed out at the Senior Bowl. Darius Robinson went in the first round for the Cardinals. Similar, okay production, had a really nice Senior Bowl, one of the best we've ever seen, just from a pure one-on-one wins standpoint and across multiple alignments. So he's in this spectrum of there's risk attached to it. There are success stories. Josh Sweat, who's a 4th rounder. Darius Robinson, we don't know yet. Jermaine Johnson looks like he's trending in the right direction. Trayvon Walker, wherever you want to put him. Tyree Wilson, maybe he's trending in the right direction. But in most of those cases, no matter what you say about Trayvon, he hasn't figured, like, he might be good in year 4, right? You might be sacrificing half the rookie contract to hope that by the end of it, you have a guy who's worth re-signing. And that matters as well, because I think that's also part of the Shemar Stewart story. It might take 3 or 4 years before you reap the upside rewards. And that's not great bang for your buck on the first contract.
Right. I just think it's interesting to me in that I think he's becoming one of these players now where the overall like projection of where they think he's going to go doesn't even mesh what people are seeing. Like, people are being dishonest is the wrong word. Your brain is misleading you. Like, the reptilian part of your brain is taking over and saying, forget what the logic part has written down. Look at this play where he bull rushes a tackle into the quarterback. I want that guy in the top 10 draft picks, right? Like, take your notes and your info and your data and just junk it, because I've seen this play and that's all that's taken over. Like, if you read, I'm not going to read it out because, it's a lot of work, but like, he has 5 negative bullet points in Dane's breakdown, and they're all catastrophic. It's like every aspect of being a pass rusher. And it's like, on the other hand, he's the 9 overall player in the entire in the entire draft. Like, those 2 things don't sync to me. I don't think you can have that, even if you're like, projection and upside and potential and the positives. I don't think you can outweigh that amount of negative.
Last thing I just want to say really quick. When Jack Sawyer didn't make either of our top 10s because he's just the complete opposite, right? He's a bad athlete, productive player. If you want to eliminate Will Campbell because of arm length or Jack Sawyer because he doesn't have edge rush athleticism, for me, the production not only matters more, down-to-down production as measured in a PFF way with 10 years of this information matters more than the things you would eliminate Jack Sawyer or Will Campbell because of his arm length. It's probably 70-30 production to athleticism when it comes to the edge. So the elite athleticism for Shemar Stewart, fine. He doesn't tick the most important box for a first-round edge rusher. And for me, that's why I would say, okay, I'm going to let someone else play that game. And I could be wrong. That's fine. But I just don't want to go down that route because you need to tick both boxes to double and triple your hit rates or your expectations on these players.
But the other thing, don't overlook this red flag that he has not shown that he can change directions athletically, right? Like this is a thing. We're going to talk about him as this super athlete because what he has put down is elite, but he's like, it's like, oh, don't worry about that thing. Like, yeah, I've done it. Where's this part of the test? Oh, don't worry. It's there, right? I'm not going to show it to you, but yeah, I've done it. You're good.
He's the DK Metcalf of pass rushers here, just straight.
Right. Like we're going to assume he's this special athlete because the stuff that he has shown is elite, but he is very specifically not shown one seriously important part of being an athlete at a pass rushing position. Right. So like if that's a huge part of your projection, right? I believe that Shemar Stewart is still worth the top 10 draft pick, despite all these negatives and this lack of production, because sometimes Danielle Hunter happens, right? And super athletes become amazing pass rushers despite no college production. If that's your argument, then you need to explain to me how you are coming to the conclusion that he is a super athlete, despite not showing you change of direction numbers and quite a lot of the tape showing some change of direction problems.
I know we're just trying to balance it out really quick. With Stewart, I don't want to come across so negative because we're trying to say, like, other people have him high, we have him lower. I'll also say, if you put him on the Eagles or the teams that are 7 and 8 deep on the defensive line, and he plays his bull in a china shop, just destroy the dude in front of you with bull rushes as a pass rusher and just run around. And I mean, he's got cinder block hands in the run game. I think he could be a real disruptive run game, disruptive run game presence. You put him with a deep defensive line, and I don't care about his sack totals or everything. I think he sets everyone else up. I think that is an underrated part of Shemar Stewart's game, maybe even more than Trayvon Walker or Tyree Wilson. I think he could be more down-to-down disruptive. But if you want him, to your point, to be the quote 10-sack guy who does finish plays and everything, maybe there are more concerns about his game. So, like I said, I keep saying I get Shemar Stewart. I understand the appeal. I just don't know if I'm ready to make – I might understand the appeal more than even Walker or Tyree Wilson, to be honest.
Definitely more than Tyree Wilson, not more than Walker to me. But it's a different – again, I've said this like all the way through the process, right? It's a different conversation because I'm not talking about drafting him number 1 overall. I'm talking about where in the first round does he draft. I think I would take him at the bottom of the first round somewhere. Somebody else is going to take him in the middle of the first round somewhere, and I'm not willing to go there. That being said, as much as I'm pushing back on this, look, hey, but this, I get it. Like the reptilian part that I was talking about earlier, every time I turn on his tape, there's a play within, the first 5 snaps where I'm like, yeah, I get it. I want that. I'm not willing to quit him, right? There are other players that are in this sort of spectrum of, good athlete, non-productive player where I'm like, I don't want it. I don't think that's going to work out, right? Like I'm not even, yes, I'm willing to take a chance somewhere, but it's like in the 3rd or the 4th round. It's basically saying I'm not willing to draft that guy. I don't believe it will work out. I'm not there on Shemar Stewart, and I can't get there. Like I kind of want to get there because a lot of the data says this just isn't going to work. But you watch his tape and you're like, dude, that plays. There's stuff there that's going to play. So it's an awkward eval because I think the people that are putting him as the 2nd best edge rusher in this draft, that are ranking him in the top 10, I don't want to say crazy, but I think that's a stretch. I think it's hard to get there based off all the information we have on him. But all it takes is for you to throw up 10 plays, pick any 10, throw up 10 of his snaps. There'll be a play in there that makes me go, all right.
That's the thing. I know. Look, I don't care if we go 3 hours. I don't care. If you're going to take the guy top 10 as an edge rusher, they have to have the production box ticked. And look, we had the same conversations 3 years ago. Yeah, well, Trayvon, they use him as a 4 technique, and he's on stunts all the time. That's fine. I don't even care why the production isn't there. It isn't there. If I haven't seen it, if you haven't seen it, you're projecting it. And if you're going to do that with the top 10, it has never ended well with top 10 edge rushers who are merely athletes. It just hasn't. And for every Danielle Hunter who figured it out later, or Josh Sweat, those are 3rd and 4th round picks. Like, those guys are probably properly valued, right? If you were with a lie detector test, if you told me, where would you take Shemar Stewart? I'm probably more like 3rd round. I get it. I get the risk more. You're saying late 1st round. So it's just where that's where those guys probably should be valued. So when you're saying top 10, you better tick both of those boxes, no matter what the context is behind scheme or whatever it is. Even though there's a lot to like about Shemar Stewart, it's why I have him at 8, because I get it. Like, I still get it. Landon Jackson's number 9, Sam. Oh, I love these discussions. These are fun. Landon Jackson from Arkansas.
6'6", 265 pounds, big, long, strong defensive end who, unlike a lot of these other guys, actually had his hand in the dirt most of the time. Like, one of the things that was driving me nuts about watching all these edge rushers is the way college defenses are now. Everyone's standing up. Everyone's in a 2-point stance. Nobody's got their hand in the dirt, coiled as a 4-3, defensive end anymore. Landon Jackson did, though. I don't really have anything on that other than as an interesting aside that he had a defense where he actually got that opportunity. Tested out as a freaky athlete as well. That in this world of, hey, dude, that should mean something. We got a 41-inch vertical at 264 pounds, 10'9" broad jump, ran 4.68 in the 40. Like, these are all elite numbers. We're giving other guys credit for that. Landon Jackson was a pretty elite athlete at that size. He's got good hands as well, powerful hands. He's got another guy with a good 2-hand swipe, cross chop, that kind of stuff. He's got the length to him as well. At 6'6", like, he can lock out offensive tackles and keep them like out of his frame completely. I know you sent me that frame of him doing that to Will Campbell and Will's stumpy little arms, but he was doing that to legitimate long-armed offensive tackles as well. So he's interesting to me because I see him slightly differently to a lot of other people. I think he's actually at his best as a true edge rusher, trying to get around the edge and turning the corner. Now, he doesn't do it the same way that a guy like Abdul Carter does, right? Where he's doing it with the bend and the speed. He does it more with, he uses his hands to get position, and then he's got the power to turn that corner and run the tight arc with an offensive tackle leaning on him. So the stuff we were saying that, Ezeiraku or Bradyn Swinson don't necessarily have, like, if they don't have if the tackle's able to lean on them, they can get pushed by. Landon Jackson's able to turn the corner with the tackle leaning on him, which is interesting. So he's sort of like this, I think he's an edge rusher threat, but who wins with like size and power and length.
Yeah. I think that makes sense to me. Because, yeah, he's certainly not going to bend around the edge. This high cut nature, I think, definitely works against him in a few different areas. But he just grew on me the more. He's another guy, like, we all come in with bias, Sam. Like, I didn't really want to like Landon Jackson. I don't think I wanted to. I didn't know that I was going to, I guess, is what I was coming. Just like Swinson. I wasn't expecting to, is what the best way to say it.
Right.
And then you kept winning different ways. Love his power in the run game. Resets the line of scrimmage. I did tweet out that picture of the arm length thing with him and Will Campbell, and somebody was like, this looks like Michael Johnson. Remember Michael Johnson from Georgia Tech to the Bengals in the 3rd round? Michael Johnson was supposed to be a 1st-round pick. He was the 6'7", freaky athlete type, and he went in the 3rd round too, and he turned into, it took him 4 or 5 years, remember, before he really became a good pass rusher. Maybe another good Shemar Stewart-ish type of comp. But I love that when somebody mentioned Michael Johnson. So I think he's another high floor type of player who can be outstanding in the run game, sets a hard edge. And, go ahead.
really good run defender. Like he's got the bulk and the size, again, some of the thing that some of these other guys don't necessarily have. That it wasn't just that one play, by the way, against Will Campbell where he beat him for length. Like he had Will Campbell in trouble in that game. He beat him in a variety of different ways. Beat him with the length there. He beat him with a really nice cross chop. He had the long arm. Like he gave Will Campbell all kinds of problems. And actually, some of Landon Jackson's best games came against the best opposition. Like he had this knack of playing his best against the best opponents. I think there's probably something to that. I mean, that's what we want to see from the Senior Bowl, right? Go and do it in an all-star setting. I mean, effectively he did that, but just during the course of his regular, game to game, week to week play, he dominated the all-star competition that he faced, which I think is probably a good thing for him.
So this might not sound like edge 9 or a potential first round pick, but the other two names that I wrote down, AJ Epinesa for the Bills, Arnold Ebiketie for the Falcons, not because of size or necessarily, but is Landon Jackson merely a third edge rush type? Is he more of a rotational type of player? I have those questions. I mean, if he is your third edge, I love that. I love that for your team and your depth. Can he be an edge 2 on a team? Absolutely. I would rather him play an Epinesa, Ebiketie type of role, especially Epinesa. I think what he brings to the Bills. But again, I think I wrote that down early in my notes, and then Jackson just grew on me more and more because I think he has enough of a pass rush moveset to be dangerous, plus the high floor run defender. In this top 9 so far, Sam, I've said high floor run defender quite a few times now. So I think that's what makes this draft really intriguing and deep on the edge. I think there's a lot of players who, at the very least, you're getting solid, right? You're getting a decent player who's going to potentially start for you with some theoretical pass rush upside. I think Jackson's very much in that boat, given his size, workout, and moveset that he brings to the table.
Yeah, he's on the Shemar Stewart spectrum as well, right? Like he's actually been a relatively unproductive pass rusher despite having more sacks. Like the sack numbers don't look bad for him. So I don't think people are putting him in the same bucket, but his pass rush win rate is only marginally better than Shemar Stewart's over the last couple of years. His PFF pass rushing grades have never been elite. He's been a better run defender than pass rusher. And then he goes and shows up and it's like, oh, wow, he's actually a really good athlete. So he's actually in that same bucket of Stewart and Mykel Williams to a degree as well, the kind of athletic freak size guy who isn't that productive. And look, ultimately, this isn't inconsistent. Like I'm not talking up one guy whilst damning the others, or at least I am, but only relative to like where other people have them. But I haven't ranked below those two guys. Like I'm not. I liked his tape more, same as you. He grew on me the more I watched, and I think the positives started to shine through, but not to the point where I was willing to put him above Shemar Stewart, whose tape did connect with the lizard part of my brain and want me to take him more. But he's in that group. I do wonder that he's a guy that I kind of think if you just part of it is how you're going to use him at the next level. Like I wonder if you actually say to him, look, trust your athleticism, trust your moves, try and win on the edge more. Don't just try and power through a guy. Like be a pass rusher. Don't just be an athlete. Don't just be a big dude. I wonder if you can get more production out of him without having to do an awful lot more. Like you don't have to teach him a bunch of things. You just have to say, hey, do this. Like you're good at this. Don't, you're 6'6", 265. Don't like just rely on that. Go and beat the guy around the edge.
Yeah, no, he's Landon Jackson's a really interesting player. I think you could do some different things with him. The size plays, as I mentioned, he's a disruptive run defender. When he gets knocked off balance, it's usually a pad level thing, right? He's just difficult to keep your balance sometimes when you're 6'6" playing on the edge. But again, I think just a good solid player. You put him in the late first as well the other day, and I could see that. Yeah. I mean, this is the depth of the edge rush class. The top 9 players that we've discussed here, all potential first-round picks, even Swinson, who even though I think we're higher on him than maybe the consensus.
Oh, man. I'm going to have to do the camera thing.
Fix your camera situation. If you
can sit up.
If you have nothing else on Landon Jackson, we can get to Nic Scourton, who we've called Scourton before. I think we're going to roll with Scourton now that the beast is out. Texas A&M edge rusher here.
Yeah. The beast is out with the official pronunciations. Also, I've seen multiple interviews where people have called him Scourton to his face, and he seemed happy by it. So I'm going to assume it's Nic Scourton. So he was the guy that I had at number 11 when I first did this thing, and then decided last second to put him in. Not sure I'm happy about it.
Who did he replace?
We'll get to that because who he replaces is a name that is definitely a wild card.
Just missed. Okay.
Scourton's interesting because we need to ask Dane this. Literally the first thing I checked in the Beast was for clarity on this and couldn't find any. So he played last year at 280 pounds. He weighed in at his pro day at 257 pounds. And according to Scourton himself, so he's another guy that, did different things previous years. He was at Purdue before the Texas A&M. And he was better at Purdue, did not back up the Purdue performance production tape with the same level of performance at Texas A&M. So you're like, well, okay, let's go back and watch him at Purdue. Now, I turned on that tape and I thought he looked visibly smaller, better put together. Now, according to Scourton, he also played at 280 at Purdue, but it was a better 280. So according to him, he was like a well put together 280 at Purdue, then was like a sloppy 280 at Texas A&M, and is now cut down to 257 and is going to play something in the 260 range in the NFL. So, I mean, this is just a wild, because 280 was the Texas A&M 280 was terrible for him. I thought he looked badly put together. I don't think that helped him as a weight. It didn't look good at all. 20 to 25 pounds coming off that is a significant chunk. And if he claims he played at the same weight, but just better at Purdue, I don't quite know what to do with that. But anyway,
I thought he looked thick. Sorry, I thought he looked thick at Purdue. I thought he looked like the James Harrison-ish type of body at Purdue.
He was definitely thick, but he didn't look like it looked slimmer than it did at Texas A&M. Where
it's like endearing thick, not fat thick. Thick
right
with a double C is okay, maybe.
There you go.
Did we get that right, millennials?
Thanks. 280.
What else about him as a player?
I mean, obviously you've got that compact sort of blocky build. I thought he had some good moves inside, like his spin moves in particular were really good. He has that, you tend to find this, I think, sometimes with these stocky brick shaped people that they have a really good spin move because I don't know, it's something about being more compact and enables you to spin tighter and just it has more of an impact. But his spin in or outside was good.
Uses it a lot, right? The double, the two-way spin. He uses that quite a bit.
Right. Strong, powerful, high motor, legit hustle type of player, which again is not helped by being 280 pounds, especially if it's not a good weight. You're not helping yourself there. Only 20 years old as well. So there's he's an interesting kind of upside play. I do think if I'm an NFL team, I want an answer as to what the hell was happening with all that weight stuff, right? Number one, why are we fluctuating 25 pounds in any direction? Number two, why were you bad 280 at Texas A&M? It's not like this is a backward school without a program. This is a blue blood college program with nutritionists and weight rooms and, strength and conditioning programs. How do you get to crappy 280 in a program like that? What the hell happened there? That's its own. I'm going to need a good answer to that before we go anywhere.
I really, coming into the season, I thought Scourton would be higher. I thought we would be talking about him as a top 15 type of pick because he was. Is a roller coaster of emotions for me watching him and looking at his profile, right? So you've got the age thing, which does matter, right? Unbelievably productive in the Big Ten at a young age at Purdue, goes to A&M, not nearly as productive last year. You could say, use the same excuses that you would use for Shemar Stewart. As I was telling you yesterday, though, they have three guys who could all go in the top 100, certainly, but 2 first rounders maybe, plus Shemar Turner. And it was number 18 off the edge that seemed to pop more than any of those guys for Texas A&M. That was a bit of a concern. My other concern was weight fluctuation or whatever. I also thought some of the production felt empty. So production for me is definitely through a PFF lens. Are you winning one-on-one? Are you getting to the quarterback? Are you disruptive? He has all that. Not a great finisher. Then I go back and I'm like, man, he does have a lot of spin moves, spin move wins. Those are hit or miss at the next level if that's your big go-to. And then a lot of his wins are winning over guards. The number of times at Purdue where he would win, from more of a stand-up position against guards. And I'm like, that's not really what he's going to be doing at the next level a whole lot. So every time I'm like, I'm starting to feel it. I like it. There's some good things. There's some, but to his game as well. But I think he is strong. Cinder block hands for him as well in the run game. I think he could do, play the run pretty well. I think he can be disruptive. I just don't know if he has the full tool set to win on the edge consistently enough while also complementing that with, being able to finish plays.
But I will say I did like that Purdue tape a lot more. Like I went, when you go back and watch him theoretically put together, so he's obviously put together better physically at that point. Now the only question is at what weight? Like was he put together? Was that actually 280 or was that more? Because other people have said he played at 265 or something at Purdue. So I don't know what the weight was then, but either way, he was visibly put together better at Purdue, and I thought he was significantly more dynamic and. I like that tape a lot better. The PFF grades agree. He was a 90.9 pass rushing that year. He had 42 pressures as opposed to and double the number of sacks. I mean, I thought he was a much more dynamic, disruptive player with that Purdue tape than he was at Texas A&M.
The other thing I'll say too, it reminds me a little bit of last year, Braylon Trice, who ended up going in the third round to the Atlanta Falcons because of the weight thing, right? Trice was listed at 275 and then weighed in at like 248 or whatever it was. So trying to figure out what he played at. And then Trice, also another guy, baseline production numbers were strong, but some of those felt empty as well. He was getting isolated on running backs and, maybe Scourton, beat up on some guards or, just not complete empty calorie production, but more along that spectrum, which reminded me of Trice. Again, a guy that I thought production profile that I would like more. And then I got into the film. I'm like, all right, I have some concerns here. Trice ended up going in the third round, by the way. So I don't know. I think Scourton's probably a better prospect. Plus, as you mentioned, under 21 years old. He's one of the few players still under 21 in this draft. You usually think of those players as, can put on weight, can grow. And Scourton's more like dropping 20 pounds or whatever he's doing. So it's just a really interesting profile, but still feels like if you get him in the second round, you might be getting just good value for a second round type of player who could have been a first rounder.
Yep. All right. Players we got to mention.
Oh, you're ready. Who just missed for you?
So I don't want to give the guy that just missed, but I'll give the guy that was next. Princely Umanmielen, the Ole Miss pass rusher. He's another guy whose tape grew on me the more I watched him. I thought he was going to make your top 10. A little surprised he didn't. But like he's a really good pass rusher, consistently excellent PFF pass rushing grades. He's got some nice moves, can turn the corner really well. I don't know if his change again. So that idea that change of direction can be a couple of different measures. I don't know if his stop start is great, but his bend is. Like he's got that bend around the edge that's really good. Lean angle is really impressive, but stop start sometimes I thought could be a little bit rough. That kind of change of direction, like he's definitely got some pass rushing juice to him.
Yeah, you thought I was, because I sent you a message yesterday. I said Princely has something only Abdul Carter has in this draft, which is that bend and the combination of burst and bend around the edge. So you probably, and I wanted to put him higher too. The lack of power is the question for me, right? He's a serial, I wrote down serial spin move user, right? Just obnoxious use of the spin move, which is nice and tight and is useful. But he relies on it quite a bit. So he's DPR, man. He is designated pass rusher. I don't know if I trust him in the run game. I don't know if he can win with power enough, but if he's your just get after the QB third down guy and edge three, who's just going to do that, man, I think so. He's different from these other high floor run defender types. I think he's got this 10 sack potential off the edge, but you probably want to limit his ability on early downs in the run game. So to me, it's a value thing. Where do you want to value that? Because I think he's well worth the second round pick for me as well. If that's what you need is the juice off the edge. So I could have put him higher. I don't know if he has the complete game that maybe some of these other guys might have.
Yeah. I mean, I really like his pass rushing potential. I mean, he can get around the corner at a really impressive clip. And look, he annihilated Georgia's offensive tackles when he played them. Like he's got some really high points.
Yes. He just ran right past them. I don't know if you could do that's really impressive. I just don't know if you could do that. Their tackles were absolutely their weakness this year. So But yeah, he's impressive. I lament maybe not having him in the top 10 the more we talk about these players.
Yeah, I thought you were going to put him in the top 10. I was trying to get him up there. I couldn't get him into the top 10, but I think he's definitely worth a comment. David Walker is somebody that a ton of people have talked about now as their sleeper, but also just a really good pass rusher. He's the guy from Central Arkansas, 6'1", 263 pounds, Brandon Graham body type and measurements and size, insane production PFF grades, like a 95 type of pass rushing grade from PFF. Obviously, the level of competition is sometimes awful at Central Arkansas, but like we've seen worse in recent years. I mean, Jalix Hunt was drafted from like Houston Christian or whatever that was, and is now like, dumping Bryce Huff off the active roster for the Eagles in a Super Bowl. Like, we've seen worse than that. Like so the level of competition wasn't amazing, but he was basically the best player at that level of competition by a mile. He won the Buck Buchanan Award for the best FCS defender in 2024. Was pretty solid at the Senior Bowl, so he did go to the All-Star competition. Didn't like jump out as like, oh man, look at this man amongst boys, but he held his own. Like he didn't jump out on the bad side either. He was solid. Obviously, at that size, he's like a leverage monster. Like he just gets right under offensive tackles. Again, like Brandon Graham. Think of the number of bull rushes Brandon Graham has where he just goes in under an offensive tackle and drives the dude back. He can do that pretty well. Great motor as well. Like he keeps cooking. Another Brandon Graham thing. It's pretty hard to kill him stone dead on a play. Like he's going to keep coming like the Terminator. You gotta get rid of the ball eventually. He's going to keep coming at you. I liked him, but I didn't love him. So many people have been talking him up as like their favorite player in the draft, and I love Brandon Graham as a player as well. So he was a guy I really wanted to love. And then you're watching the tape, you're like, yeah, I mean, I like him, but I'm not willing to go overboard here.
Yeah, no, I like Walker. I mean, he didn't make my top 10. He's probably in the top 15 for me. Had success against Oklahoma State's right tackle Dalton Cooper back in 2023. So you always want to check the competition things. He had some bull rush pressure, but it felt more like he's a leverage winner. Elvis Dumerville, type of squatty win with leverage type of body. So I think he could be an effective pass rusher at the next level, but not the all around prospect, which again is why he's not top 10 for me.
Yeah.
Or you.
No.
Who else do you want to? Well, Jack Sawyer, he's been mentioned a bunch in here. So I think in another year, I feel good about Sawyer even as a second round pick. Just a really good football player. We don't have workout numbers for him, probably because he's not going to work out very well. He's not a workout warrior type of guy. Just a good football player. And of course, famously had the strip sack and return against Texas to win that game. So the Sam Hubbard comps are going to write themselves, right? Okay athlete, Ohio State, the whole thing. Cincinnati could even look at him in the second round. I think they'll write themselves. But the lack of straight up burst off the edge and everything is concerning. Even though the guy that he beat, Cameron Williams from Texas, the guy he beat on that rush is a guy that's draftable, right? I mean, that's true. He's a good productive player, man. But I wrote down another Ebiketie type of comp, which is a guy so maybe that burnt me a little bit because I thought he was so technically sound, hands winner, just a technician. But he's just become a good rotational player. And I think that's probably, maybe what Sawyer ends up becoming. So good player, good run defender, might not have that same pass rush upside, but uber productive with presumed underwhelming workout that he didn't even attempt.
Right. Yeah. So he was the first, we said this before, right? Where you get deep enough into a class and you hit the beige tranche of pass rushers who are like, it's all just fine. It's all fine. He was the first guy where I got the beige vibes this year. I'm like, he's good, he's technical, he's solid, but he's not a great athlete, and it's all just okay. And it's fine. I don't love those guys as pass rushers. I don't think they have a particularly good record of panning out as good NFL players. And they're another one. My attention's going to get drawn to the shiny object somewhere else that can have higher potential than that.
Yeah, and so you know me, I'm a production guy first. I think it weighs the most. But if you break down edge rushers, high production, low athletes, those guys don't do great. And then the low production, great athletes, those guys don't have a great track record either. So when we could go back to tick both boxes, you know, that's the challenge I think with Jack Sawyer. I saw the chat mention Jared Ivey in the another guy, uber productive at Mississippi. I mean, that dude popped on film. The whole Ole Miss defensive line was incredible, but one of the worst. I mean, he had a bad workout for a defensive tackle. So that's and maybe that's what he is at 6'6", 285. But compared to edge rushers, he ran over 5'1", 40. Horrible change of direction. I mean, if you're going to call Jared Ivey an edge rusher, good football player, powerful player, but that has to be a late round player now because the workout was just that bad.
So I really like Jared Ivey, but
yeah,
I think he's
until you saw the workout, until you saw the numbers.
So I really like him, but I think he's an interior player. Like I think he is a defensive tackle, like a sort of, he's a classic, three old school, 3-4 type of defensive end, right? Those guys have now just become those generic interior positionless players that move around. He was reminding me quite a lot of Calais Campbell. I think he's that type of player. He's a massive guy, like 6'6", 275 pounds ish, probably a little bit heavier than that when he's playing. He looks a little bit ungainly, but he's like slippier than I expected. Like he's not just a sort of, long, tall, bull rushing guy. He actually like evades blocks and sort of slips off and gets into the backfield and causes havoc. Like I kind of expected him to play like Tyree Wilson, right? This very linear, straight line type of player, but he's actually got some wiggle. It doesn't look good because it's like giant, gangly, long limbs. You know this, right? It doesn't look pretty. It's not aesthetically pleasing, but it's effective.
But I could get past it, gangling.
So like he covers as much as the workout was bad. But he does seem to cover like a ridiculous amount of ground laterally when he moves. Like he's got, again, a bit like Shemar Stewart. He's got that kind of Euro step that travels a serious distance when he does it because of those long limbs. Like either if he tries to jump across a gap or on stunts, like he seems to be able to cover ground pretty effectively, pretty quickly. Obviously, his length is utterly ridiculous. Like he's able to completely, like he, like those sort of classic cartoons where you're like holding, Tom is holding Jerry at the end, like the little child just can't do anything, like hand on his head and he's just swinging blindly. Like he's able to do that to offensive tackles at that size. It's ridiculous. He just locks them out and they're like little arms trying to grasp at nothing. I think he could kick inside and end up as like a legit defensive tackle. Yeah.
And so and I'm okay. Like he's intriguing at that. He's not part of this edge rush discussion because I was curious about the workout, like if he ran like a 4.8 and it's like, oh, he's a power edge or something. But I mean, it was just defensive tackle workout. So maybe that's just all he is.
I think it is.
Who else do you have? We'll give official sleepers in a minute, but who else do you want to mention as potentially just missed here?
So the chat, I don't think he necessarily just missed, but the chat multiple times has asked about Ahmad Hassanein, the Boise State edge rusher. It's his tape is kind of what you'd expect it to be. I mean, he was the guy that jumped out of the combine because number one, his story is amazing, right? So he's going to be the first guy from Egypt, like actually from Egypt, as opposed to Egyptian heritage. He moved over to the States in 2018, 2019, something like that. He was like a teenage CrossFit champion. And then his family effectively moved him over to the States to try and get him, the American dream, better life, blah, blah, blah. College football program, pass rusher. And then at the combine, he was so like pumped up, psyched up for it. He's like jawing with the coaches that are running the drills, like before the drills, like they're trash talking each other. Like he's just jazzed to be there. So it's an awesome story. And he plays that way, right? Like he plays like a dude that is just like loving it, right? All motor, all hype, all effort, like all grit. He'd be on the all grit team. Unfortunately, just not a great athlete. And it's like,
Yeah.
there's so many plays where like either he's one-on-one in the open field and it's just too easy for a guy to shake him. Like he's pretty productive because he's strong, he's powerful, he plays with an incredible motor. But there's athletic limitations there and dynamic, explosive limitations that I think will certainly limit what he's going to be. But I do think coaches will love that kid. Like coaches will love him. That's the type of effort that wins you special teams jobs, sticks you onto an NFL roster for a while, like carves you a role. And like, who knows what he can become given where he's already come from. So I love his story. I love him as a day 3 flyer for somebody, but the tape is certainly a little bit limited.
I'm just going to run through a few names, and if you want to jump in and give your take after I do it, go for it. So JT Tuima, I had it. Oh man, I was gonna Tuimalau. I had it ready, and then I just like brain froze. JT Tuimalau from Ohio State, former 5-star recruit, got better every year. Another high floor run defender. I don't think he's got the whole toolbox for rushing the passer or enough of the pure threaten the edge athleticism. He's like Sawyer, always felt like a second rounder to me. But now as you see the depth of this class, like a theoretical second rounder. Right. In this class, though, that could be third round, right? With the depth that you have here, where there's so many other players that bring more to the table. So good football player. Had one of the best games I've ever seen against Penn State back in 2022. We're talking interceptions and forced fumbles and the whole thing. Beat up on Olu Fashanu, but I always blamed that on Fashanu and his technique in that particular game more than anything. So solid, right? Solid player. Jordan Birch wears his 285, 290 extremely well. Really, really well. Unbelievable mover, but another not that productive, right? He shows a little stab, shows some bend, and shows the stuff. Good shed and be athletic and track down quarterbacks, but I don't think he's a great one-on-one pass rusher.
He's so big. He's massive. He at the combine was 279 and he ran a 4.67. Like he's huge and athletic. Not like he's not twitchy, but he is pretty athletic and fluid in his movement. Like he's one of these guys who, at that size, at that weight, it doesn't look lumbering. Like he's actually athletic and smooth at that size. It's just the quick twitch isn't necessarily there. It feels like he should have been more productive than he was given those physical tools alone. And he's done it, multiple different places like South Carolina and then Oregon. Another guy though, that at that size, like feels, then you're into that tweener world of like, what exactly are you? Are you this defensive end? Are you a defensive tackle? Are you just one of these positionless move up and down the line type of the guys? Yeah,
I've seen him. People want to, move him up, or I think Dane actually might have him in his top 10. He's just not productive enough for me. Another athletic projection type. Josiah Stewart from Michigan. I thought I would have him higher coming into the season. He does have the burst and bend off the edge. I think he benefits a little bit from Michigan's scheme. They free him up quite a bit. But if you're talking about designated pass rush type, edge 3, I like Josiah Stewart maybe in that type of role.
Yeah, he's actually really interesting. Small, twitchy, explosive, somewhere in the 240s. He was 249 at the combine and then 242 at his pro day, I think. So he's been somewhere in the 240s throughout this entire process. 4 straight seasons of like good to great production across Coastal Carolina and then Michigan. He plays with the same like violence that Mike Green does. There's just less of him. There's just less. Yeah. It doesn't make as much of an impact because he's a smaller guy, but like he plays with that same intensity and same same actual aggression and violence with his play. Definitely lacks the power to move people, unless he's got like a running start at them. But I think his hand usage, I think, is spotty. Like he often misses his target, which just doesn't help him. I think if you got his hands to the same level of as his physical tools, like his explosiveness, his agility, then you'd have something really special as a situational pass rusher.
Kyle Kennard from South Carolina, another guy I thought we'd hear more about because he was tearing up the SEC. But the problem for me, it was a year 5 breakout for Kennard. So the full swath of production wasn't there. That doesn't always translate well. But he's a length winner. He's got some skills off the edge. And Sam, I don't know if this happened to you, but the number of times, it's starting to get concerning, where I mentioned when Will Campbell got beat. I have Kennard beat him pretty cleanly twice, Landon Jackson twice, Scourton twice in 2000. Was it? Yeah, Scourton once or twice. I don't know if I'm just picking on Will Campbell, but he shows up in my edge notes quite a bit, and Kennard did get him a couple times. That is one of the some of the downside with Will Campbell in the short arms. Landon Jackson, Kyle Kennard, length type of winners have given him problems, and I think Kennard's a mid-round type of player, in part because he really just had the one productive year last year at South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily an indictment on the length thing, but Renner brought this up, you know, when we had him on the show. Will Campbell's tape is not as clean as, you know, these other kind of top tier offensive tackle prospects that we've been talking about. Forget the arm length for a moment. If we're just saying this is his tape, where is he? His tape isn't as clean as those guys. So you're already talking about a guy who isn't at the level of a Joe Alt or you know, some of these other elite tackle prospects. And then you're asking, is the arms going to be a problem at the next level? So it's worth, yeah, it is. It's a fair point that, you know, you go through this edge rusher class and you do see quite a lot of them beating Will Campbell. Not, you know, they're not doing it every play, but
yeah,
like, again, you don't tend, like, you're not going to find that. Go through Joe Alt's tape, right? When you went through edge rusher prospects that year, you did not find a sequence of guys beating Joe Alt. The guy gave up like 7 pressures in a season or whatever. So it is a notable difference for Will Campbell versus, you know, some other elite tackle prospects.
All right. Do you want to get into our sleepers, or do you have anyone else you want to mention?
Who else would I bring up?
Ashton
Yeah,
Galati.
no, we can go straight to sleepers.
Okay.
Since
Who's
we're,
your sleeper?
9 hours into this.
Yeah, we're closing in on 2.5. I think it's a good, well-paced show. Does it feel slow? Doesn't feel slow to me. Still exciting. We're going to be here for like, what? How many hours on draft night? Starts at 8. We'll start at 7 probably through mid. We'll do 5 hours. We'll do about 7 night 1, by the way, right here. Check the Mike YouTube channel. And then probably about 9 on day 2. About 16 hours the first 2 days. And you guys can hang out with us the entire time. It'll be great. Go ahead.
Minimum.
Sleeper. Who you got?
Sleeper. Q Robinson from Alabama. Turns out his name is Q because it's like Quandarius or something. It's like the lung, you know, it's got a real name, but it's one you don't really want to be saying all the time. So Q Robinson, dude,
we have the same sleeper. We have the same sleeper. Great.
You have him as your sleeper as well?
Yeah.
God damn it.
Because he's only played 340 snaps. That's like classic sleeper.
Yeah. 340 something snaps, but he is twitched up, explosive, originally recruited as a safety. And it's visible from the way he moves around. Like, that guy's insane. What's annoying is he hasn't tested because he's recovering from injury. So he didn't test at his pro day or the combine. So you don't have numbers on how twitched up and explosive he is. But man, that tape looks as dynamic and athletic and as explosive as any edge rusher in this class. He's bendy. He's got that ability to run the corner and run the hoop, turn the corner, like the Abdul Carters of the world. He's got a really nice long arm as well for a guy. I don't know if his arms are actually that long, but dude, he sticks it like right under a lineman's chin and gets them rocked back that way and just has them, like, the momentum is moving backwards.
So we have this arm length gate this year. So when the first time he was mentioned on Check the Mic, Sam, it was by Rick Spielman, currently of the New York Jets, former Vikings GM. This was Spielman's sleeper back in October. And then I think he claimed he had like 35-inch arms. So I'm over here waiting to see a 35. We only got 33.5 at the combine. But with the combine measurements, you might have to make the combine adjustment at 150%. It could be 38-inch arms for Q. Yeah, I mean, so I had to look it up because the experience storyline is always fascinating to me. The fewest
370 career snaps.
Right. And so that would be the lowest number since PFF started tracking for any FBS player where there was like multiple years of data to look at. So the fewest snaps among drafted edge rushers over the last, say, 7 or 8 years. Austin Booker, 505. Greg Rousseau had 546. Now he skips his COVID year. Dominique Robinson had 541, and David Ajabu had 560 because he had his injury issues. So Q is at 370, and across like 4 or 5 years in school. Like this is the other thing you could think of is like Alex Anzalone, who had 5 years he was a linebacker, but 5 years at Florida and like under 1,000 snaps across 5 years as a linebacker because of all of his injuries. So that's part of the upside play here with Q is Bama recruited, or, Bama player with this length, uber production on the tiniest sample size we've ever seen. So who the heck knows? But of course, we came to the same conclusion. This guy's our sleeper.
Yeah, and look, so he's, what was his measurement? 6'4", 243 pounds. So another one of these guys that's pretty lightweight, undersized. But he's got extensive special teams value as well. Like he's played all special teams facets. I think you get day one juice as a situational rusher. He's got a long arm. He's got the ability to threaten the edge. He's got a nasty, like that inside swoop that Von Miller always had, where he's able to like set outside and then whoosh, like swoop right in. He does that really well. So those three things, that's an inside move, an outside move, and a kind of speed to power move with the long arm under the chin that just jacks these guys backwards. Those three things alone give him day one juice as a situational pass rusher and immediate special teams value. Like, dude, if we got to day 3 and that guy's available, I would be hammering the table to bring him in.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's just a good class. I mean, it's a good class of, I think, even though the players at the top still have some question marks, anybody in the top 8 could be going in the first round, but anyone in the top 12 to 14 could be going, by round 2. I mean, it is just a deep class. And then you're talking about deep sleepers here. Didn't get to Ashton Galati from Louisville. Antoine Powell-Ryland, APR from Virginia Tech. I think he's got some pass rush juice. Former Gator, was really productive at Virginia Tech rushing the passer. There are designated pass rushers. There are early down run stoppers. There are developmental projects. There are high upside plays like Q Robinson. There are players all over the place in this class on the edge. I think it's a great draft to double, maybe even triple up if you have the massive defensive line need. And especially with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl with their deep defensive line, I think you're going to see teams do that on draft weekend. Do we get it? Is that everybody?
Yep.
Named a lot of names. Let us know who your favorite edge rushers are. Anybody we miss? It's always names, always more players. As I mentioned, draft night, make sure you're staying with us. Make sure you're subscribed. Get all the updates. We're going to be going live all throughout the draft on Thursday night. Post-draft, recapping things all throughout the draft Friday night, recapping it Friday night, and then right into our division-by-division recaps by Saturday night. We'll recap even day 3. I mean, we'll just be going. We're just going. You never know when we're going to go live. Tomorrow we're talking draft sleepers. Let us know your favorite draft sleepers as well. And don't forget, we already have a bunch of draft bets that have come in, Sam, which I love. It's going to be one of my favorite shows. I believe what we're going to do next Wednesday, we'll have Dane Brugler on the show talking about the Beast, which drops today, 10 a.m. next Wednesday. We're going to start 30 minutes early, and then we'll get into some draft bets. So that's check the mic at the33rdteam.com. Send us your emails, your draft bets. What are your predictions? What do you want to put your name to? That's definitely going to happen on draft night. So be sure to send in those emails. Did I cover everything?
Yep. Now we're
over 2.5 hours. We did it. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you again tomorrow with more Check the Mic.